All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is a special council meeting for November the 27th. As we gather together, we'd just like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish peoples, specifically recognizing the Kwanghan-speaking people known today as the Songhees and Kasapsum nations, and that their historic connections to these lands and adjoining waters continues to this day. First, I need an approval of the agenda. Moved, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Mayor's remarks are very brief, but I do want to just acknowledge this week was held the Long Service Awards. This is the third time that the district has held those. We recognize that over 408 cumulative years of service to the district by the staff that were there. So really appreciate our HR department and all of the leadership group that helps support that award, and just recognizing so many people who give so much in public service. And the Capital Regional Housing Corporation had their financial plan meeting this week, where budgets and so forth were set. I just, one of the, so the CRHC, like most nonprofit housing providers, is facing challenges of long-term unfunded liabilities in their aging buildings. One of the numbers that they shared in that was, and they're in relatively good shape for nonprofit housing providers, but still have challenges. But the number that they shared was that across the province is around $4 billion in unfunded liabilities for nonprofit housing providers right now, which is a fairly shocking number. So there's lots of work to be done to maintain and refresh the world of nonprofit housing. So not only do we need more, but we need to also manage the aging stock that we have. So I just thought those were just some interesting things that council will have some interest in as well. And that's it. Those are all my comments. So with that, we move to the matters of the meeting tonight. The first one is the only one not subject to public input, and that is our outstanding council resolution status update. We have Ms. Hunt, our Chief Administrative Officer, to provide an introduction. Welcome, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. As you're aware, from time to time, Council may pass a resolution asking staff for work that is outside of regular operational business and in addition to Council's priority projects. Staff endeavour to work on these resolutions as time permits, either incorporating them into existing work plans, initiating a smaller project with dedicated resources, or combining them with other work that they are undertaking, either as part of a current or future Council priority project. Staff keep track of these resolutions, and this report is to provide you with an overview of those that have been completed this year and those that are still outstanding. As Council will be contemplating the Council priority projects this evening, staff wanted to make you aware of these other work items so that you have a more fulsome overview of the work plans of staff. We are here to answer any questions on these outstanding resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hunt. Are there any questions? There's no action on this. We just need to receive the report. An opportunity for questions if anybody has any. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Hunt, for putting together this long list and all the updates that staff contributed. I just wanted to know, like going forward, there are some things on that list are now marked as completed and others which are just about there. What happens to them after that? Do we just keep a record of like the corporation's achievements, or like where do they end up so that we know they've happened, or what? Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm wondering. Like, how would the public know that we'd achieved these things?
Ms. Hunt?
Thank you, through the Chair to Councillor Watson. Yes, as you will note in this report, we have highlighted some of the ones that have been completed this year. I think we can also highlight them through our annual report, where we also report on various things that have been accomplished. And yeah, we can. This is a bit of a new process, so we will be working to refine it, and over time, keeping track and being able to highlight for the public what's being completed.
Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Really appreciate this. Was an amazing list to look through, and I felt the overwhelm that staff must feel when they look at this. I guess one of my questions was just with regards to looking at this list. There's obviously a number of things on hold because this is quite a big list. I'm just wondering, with the things on hold, if there's interest, at the council table to prioritize some of those things. Is this the type of meeting, like in which we should ask some of those questions, because I don't want to detract too much from the important work we have to do today, but now that we have these in front of us, I'm just wondering about that. Thank you.
Ms. Hunt?
Yeah, through the Chair to Councillor Smart, yes, certainly if there are items on this list that council would like to see staff, prioritize over others, that would be good information for us to have. I will note that especially departments like community building and planning, who have not only a large number of items on this list, but also a number of council priority projects, as well as the legislative impacts that they've been dealing with over the last couple of years. A department like that, Mr. Bowl is going to be bringing forward a bit of a report to provide council with an overview of all the various things that he's working on and his staff, and so the council can see that holistic look and help with prioritization around that work as well. So absolutely, we'd like to hear if there are things on this list that you would like raised up in priority, and then we would take that away and see how we could incorporate it into our future work plans.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I guess really just a question, logistical update with regards to the resolution 2023-163 around the car share program bylaw. When I had read this, I thought that we had already done the work to update our bylaw to make round-trip car share possible, and that we had only deferred the proactive, encouraging car share. So I just wanted, I guess, to check in on that, and I realize you may not be able to have an answer tonight, but I guess I was just curious to find out, had that work really not been completed, and if it hadn't been completed, is it a very large scope of work? And I mainly ask because this was from an original resolution from, I think, 2021, before I was even on council, where Modo, I understand, came to the table and asked for some small bylaw changes. And so, here we are 4 years later, and is this a small enough project, 4 years later, that we could get off of our plate? So I'm just curious about that.
Sure. Before I hand it over to staff, I just want to check. I'm just usually log into the Zoom, and the Zoom does not seem to be allowing sort of an external login. I just want to make sure, because we do have some public input options, that we make sure that the Zoom is working to enable people to come in. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Rennick, I think is the...
Thank you. Through the mayor, we're just taking a look at the resolution tracker, and the note that's in front of me for that resolution is that that initiative became a council priority project, which was longlisted by direction of council in December of 2023. And so I believe that is the status of that one. Some of the implications of that bylaw are relatively straightforward. There's a provision in Oak Bay's bylaws that any branded vehicle is considered a commercial vehicle, and there are restrictions on what areas we allow commercial vehicles to park. I know one of the popular car shares, Evo, is a branded vehicle, so that is a relatively straightforward change. But some of the larger policy pieces around, does council want to allow these vehicles to park in residential only areas as some other cities do, for example? It was our understanding that there was a little bit more to this one, and that's why it ultimately morphed into a potential project, which is on the council priority long list.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rennick. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, then to staff, I guess my question would be perhaps to Ms. Hunt. Seeing that there's a sort of small logistical aspect of this that got roped into a bigger project that then got long listed, would it be appropriate at this meeting to have a motion arising to potentially ask council if they'd like to look at just the small logistical part of that bylaw? And perhaps would the most appropriate time for that be at the end of the meeting? Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Procedurally here, I might should I turn to you, Ms. Hunt? Since for Ms. Anderson has got dragged off to do something else. Procedurally here, I think either way would be amenable. I think Just, I think from a courtesy to other councillors who I think probably weren't thinking of changing a lot of things on this list, it might be good if they're flagging it, maybe we can come back to it, just so we can kind of have some time to look at some of the other priorities and consider this as amongst the other pieces that are in there. But I don't think it has to be a motion arising out of this particular section. We can still receive this report and then have motions following. Ms. Hunt?
Yes, to your worship, yeah, we could turn it into a notice of motion to provide council with, information on a future meeting. So we could work with a member of council to come up with a notice of motion rather than doing it this evening as a motion arising.
I might consider it a motion arising if that's the will of the council to look at it. But I do think, just because most people reading this report probably weren't also looking at changes, I think just if you want to flag it as a potential thing to raise, think about it, think of some wording. We can maybe come back to it towards the end of the meeting. Since this, we don't need any amendments or anything else as part of this receipt motion. So, Councillor Braithwaite?
Thanks so much, Mayor, and through you. Thanks so much for this this comprehensive update on these outstanding resolutions. It's great to have that in front of us because as we're trying to balance capacity with projects, it's interesting to see this. And there's a couple of areas where I wouldn't mind asking questions, if that's all right, Mayor, through you.
Yes. Yep.
As far as the correspondence management policy goes, it says that amendments are coming in 2026, and I'm wondering if there's any interim improvements that staff can implement in the meantime.
Recording stopped.
Oh.
Thank you, Chair. That is Resolution 2023-576, and it is on page 4 of 14 of the attachment.
So are you ready to answer, Ms. Hunt?
Yes, I'm going to call on a friend through the chair. My understanding is that the changes have been incorporated into the correspondence management policy. We just have not brought that forward for council's endorsement, so it is imminently coming. It won't be long before we get that to you in 2026.
Perfect, thank you. And my next question through you, Mayor, would be around and I don't have the number, I'm sorry, the Willows Shared Knowledge Planning. So with the shift of the BC 150 funding towards Spewhung, do we know what the next steps for the Willows planning might be? Oh yeah, I guess Ms.
Go ahead, Ms. Bay.
Thank you, Your Worship. It is one of the council priority projects as well, so there's an opportunity for it to come up in the context of that discussion as well.
Okay.
But there is no funding source for that now because the funding was redirected to the discussions around Spewhung Turkey Head. So the next step, I guess, would be to determine if it is something that council wishes to advance. It would be considered a council priority project, and it would require additional funding.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Mr. Rennick?
Thank you. Through the mayor. Yes, we we presented a council project sign-off to that project earlier this year and requested council's
Recording in progress.
input. There is a public engagement component of that project. We had initially scoped that public engagement would be occurring this fall. However, there have been some delays in that project. So I'm not able to give council a more up-to-date estimate for when that engagement will occur, but I know it will be in 2026. I just don't know exactly when.
Thank you. I just want to welcome the Zoom is turned up now. We have some people online joining us. And obviously, this is for those who, if you haven't been able to get in, we are on item 4.1. This is just a receipt of the outstanding council resolution. So we're just taking some questions from members of council and expect a motion to receive the report. There's no actions directly expected out of this. So if you're coming into the meeting now, that's where we are. We are still on 4.1. This is the only item of the agenda that is not subject to public input. So although we may have missed some of this, if you people are interested in missing the first couple of questions, you can go back and watch the posted feed later. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do have, with your indulgence, I have two more questions. And through you, this one I think would be for community building and planning. And it's in regards to the STEP code Part 3 implementation. And I'm wondering, and I know that you guys have a lot on your plate, I'm wondering what remains outstanding for that Part 3 transition and whether or not we're going to be committing to that 2025-2026 timeline, or if that's, again, up to council if we do.
Not sure who to give that question. Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, we did make changes last year, this year in the building bylaw, so that is in place. This particular motion is still on the list, but only for the third item there, that staff prepare a report regarding the feasibility and resource requirements for a grant and rebate program. That's the one still outstanding, and that one is anticipated to be actioned next year as part of the as part of the climate action program. Thank you.
Thank you. And my last question is for you, Mayor. And I think this would be for Parks, Rec, and Culture. And it's in regards to the Indigenous Public Art Commission that I know has been on the books for a little while. And I'm just wondering whether or not we have any updated anticipation installation time, or if you can talk us through exactly what's been happening with that, perhaps.
Welcome, Mr. Soulier.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the public art piece that we've been discussing with the representative of the Songhees Nation most recently is still in a very early stage of the process. The previous Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Williams, was working on a process that sort of got to a place where it didn't advance, and so another representative was identified to pick that back up. So just actually in the last 2 weeks, we've initiated those conversations and started to have a discussion really about the process that we'd be going through. That is probably the best way I could describe it is, how we launch these discussions and be as sensitive to the local nations in terms of processing this and seeing what type of artwork, what the options might look like, and how to engage the artists. That's really the focus.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just thought I saw a hand go up at the back. Do we need to do anything else with the feed? We're all good? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson. It's on 4.1.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you to, I believe, to Director Bowl. Number 2023-301, that is regarding an options analysis as part of the village plan for the two municipally owned properties, the one on Monterey and the one on Hampshire. And I understand certainly they're adjacent to the village, so and should be part of the village planning, but the one particularly on Monterey is vacant and was not to be occupied due to conditions not worthy of occupancy. And so I'd like to know two things. One, how staff are monitoring it for deteriorating condition, and would they then bring it back to council to consider taking action on it, or would this warrant perhaps, if the building itself cannot be utilized again, then if it would merit consideration for council of deconstruction of that building or otherwise removal of the building, so that we in fact have vacant space to consider as part of the vacant plan or the village plan. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'm not sure who to give this to. I might hand it over to Ms. Hunt, because it's sort of a generalized question related to that building, and maybe what...
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, through the Chair to Councillor Patterson. And I may call on actually Ms. LaChance or Mr. Graham, but regarding the property at 1538 to Monterey and its well-being. I know that they are monitoring that, and I will ask them to come over and let us know what the plans are on that are.
And you are both welcome to join us. Yes, Mr. Graham first, perhaps just related to the maintenance of the building.
Through your worship, sorry, I missed part of the question. I was working on the Zoom, but the maintenance, we're doing reactive maintenance only on it. We inspect it weekly as part of our insurance requirements, and so right now it's in great condition. It's holding up well. The roof patching that we did a couple years ago are working quite well, so it's in good condition to be moved or surplus, however we decide that we want to deal with the surplus asset.
Councilor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you. Thank you so much for that response. But just for clarification, though, it is not a condition, in a sufficient condition to be given occupancy for dwelling?
Graham?
My answer, through your worship, as the district, I would not. There would be some small repairs I would want to do. But it is not far off.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you. I don't have any other hands on this item, so I'm going to ask that we have sure. Questions were in order, then you may also just want to make a motion so we can.
Sure, I can move receipt.
So moved, receipt, seconded. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. There was one other question I did have, and that was for 2021-346, and that was the plaque replacement at Walbrun Park. And I'm just wondering how far along we actually are on that, because I have had a couple of questions from different groups in regards to that wording, and when perhaps we might think that it might be getting changed, if it'll be in early 2026 or later on in 2026. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Schleyer?
Through the mayor, I unfortunately don't have an ETA on when we might be able to confirm the wording in the plaque replacement. That wording, my understanding is that has been shared with the local First Nations, and we are waiting for feedback on that.
Any other questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Watson, sorry.
I actually wanted an opportunity to make a comment before that goes to the vote. Yes. So, yes, just looking more generally at this long list, one of my reactions to it was that looking at it now, and given that some of these resolutions are quite old, if there was an opportunity, there might be things that council actually believes they no longer want to action at all. And I just wondered how we would manage that sort of process. I also saw some other things that essentially were kind of nuances of larger projects that they were associated with, like actual council priority projects, and that perhaps they didn't need to stay on this list, making it look like there was more work than there actually was, taken in the context of projects that they're very closely associated with. And I just wondered what the first of all, it may actually be a question for staff, is if you want to, if we agreed that it was worth examining that as a group, can you actually, how do you undo a resolution to say you were going to do something? I'll give you an example just to help, and it might not be a good one, but I'll pick it anyway. I noticed that one of them has to do with parking issues in and around St. Mike's. It was number 2021-261. And I wondered, I don't know enough about it, but I did wonder under discussion, if we had it, if it really is so much no longer an issue in the community that we could actually close the file on this, and if so, how we would go about doing that.
Sure, thank you. My understanding is our general process is we kind of do the major purge in the priority setting at the beginning of the term, where we sort of say, okay, so a lot of these have been put back on a long list. It still had merit, but not enough to continue kind of piece. And so that's usually where it is. There's nothing stopping us, frankly, from directing that that no longer be. And that's a good example, frankly, because it was a hot button issue, and they've done a lot of, they've rebuilt part of the school, they put in a new parking area. There's a lot of things that have changed in that, and we're not necessarily seeing the same pressures in that area. So I think that would be one of those ones. It's one of the many sort of on hold, deferred categories that, in just that category, my recollection has always been, it had merit, but did not enough to kind of, given staff constraints to do it. And so I think they would naturally come off in that process, but as part of that sort of pruning, we did a major prune at the beginning of this term with a lot of those sort of outstanding pieces.
Yeah, so that's set as long as everybody's comfortable and staff don't feel any, they're not going to be able to get to these things anyway between now and then, so maybe it doesn't matter. But I did just wonder if there, maybe next term of council halfway through, you've already generated enough of these that it's time to say, whoa, because other priorities emerge as being so much more pressing that other things, their relative importance just disappears to very, very low. So, all right. So thank you. That satisfies my interest in that issue. Thank you.
Well, you raise a point though, because it's like tonight, that tends to be the interest in going through and weeding through old resolutions is pretty low. And most of the time you want to spend focus on what shiny new things you want to do. So maybe I'll extend the question a little bit. Is there, given we have this list, would it be maybe something we could bring back to a meeting a meeting in the spring, where we kind of pre-prune a little bit as a body? Would that be a reasonable ask of staff, Ms. Hunt?
Yes, thank you very much, and I actually really appreciate the question and the desire to do that. This is a new process for myself, and definitely one that I would like to manage a little bit more closely. And so, bringing forward a report, I think originally the idea was to present these quarterly, but bringing that forward with perhaps some recommendations from staff in terms of which ones we believe are, could be removed or are resolved or incorporated into other council priority projects, to give you a bit of a starting point and then allow you to also, review it with that lens. But that would be great. Thanks.
So we may I think that what would come back would not be all the ones that are in progress and doing things. It would really be things that are on hold or that staff have flagged to say this really has already been wrapped into a different piece and for consideration. So I'm going to suggest that I'm going to call the question on this, and I think a motion arising just to ask staff to bring back any of these outstanding things to a meeting in the spring. We'll leave it vague, and that will give us a chance as a council to go through and prune some of these. I think that's a good call, Councillor Watson. Councillor Green on the motion.
Just very quickly, and I appreciate Councillor Watson's comments following on that theme. I think the most challenging part of the work is managing the expectations around all of these issues, and the public often asks, well, what happened to so-and-so and what happened to such and such? So I think we have to be really mindful that it's wonderful to have full pages of projects, but if they're not relevant and we're not going to get to them, then it's fair to think about managing the public aspect of that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to call the question on the main motion, which is just a receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? And Councillor Watson, I'll take it as a motion from you to direct the staff to bring back the outstanding or on hold, or I guess the non-active aspects of this list to a meeting next year for council consideration of continuance. Okay, moved and seconded. Do we need motivation on this? Okay, thank you. Before I call the question, I will actually acknowledge, though, this council at the beginning of this term actually did strike off a lot of these sort of, I'm not sure what you call it, they're sort of lingering motions, and it's hard to do because, politically it's easy to point and say, well, it's still on our long list. And so I do appreciate that some of the hard work here is saying no to things that are good, but are not feasible to really tackle. So. Okay, I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, everyone. Moving then to section 5, which is special meeting matters. There's 2 tonight. Both of these are available for public input. Procedurally, if anybody from the public wishes to address us on these items, if you're in the room, I'll call out public input time, and you can raise your hand. If you're online, you can use the React tab or the Raise Hand tab in the Zoom meeting and indicate your desire to speak. Procedurally, we will be taking an introduction of the matters. We will take questions from council. At the conclusion of questions and before any motions, we will then seek public input, hear from anybody from the public wishing to address us on these matters, then come back to this table and then start moving through procedurally motions to advance the direction of council. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Ms. Bay, our Director of Strategic Initiatives, to provide an introduction. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report seeks your direction on which council priority projects should be advanced in 2026. What you select determines what we deliver. So this is really about council and council's priority plan. Early in your mandate, you set out key priority themes. Since then, through the annual budget process, you have funded 36 special projects. So you didn't start out with 36. There's been projects added along the way and projects that have come off the list along the way. At present, we're standing at 36 special projects. And of those 36, 20 are now complete or nearly complete. Another 11 are underway and will continue into next year. And an additional 2 are recommended to be started. And just because it came up earlier with the last item, what happens to these at the end of the council mandate, the things that are on the long list and don't maybe make it to being council priority projects or the council priority projects that aren't initiated, though our intent is to present the new council with that list and carry forward with the council priority plan. So just like our 5-year financial plan is a revolving 5-year financial plan, that's really the way we have shaped this council priority plan as well. So I think it's just important to note that it's not failure to not have all the projects completed at the end of this mandate. It was always intended to be an ongoing plan that would partially fit into the next mandate as well. So the district has capacity to efficiently deliver on 8 to 10 major projects per year. That's been the narrative for the past few years. You'll see that 13 are recommended for 2026. And obviously that's more than we can efficiently deliver on. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking a bit about that, because the logical question is, why are staff recommending that we advance on so many projects and more than we can efficiently deliver on? And by efficiently, I mean proceeding at probably the most, the shortest timeline possible for a project. So when we're taking on more projects than the 8 to 10, it'll take longer to deliver on the projects. But we're recommending it because we believe that that's actually in the district's best interest in this particular case, even though it will take longer to deliver on the projects. And that's really because of some unique circumstances that are facing us. We have a lot of projects that are being carried over just because they are long-lasting projects. So we're already starting with the 11 projects, and the 2 additional projects that we're recommending are really being driven by some extenuating circumstances and related directly or indirectly to provincial directives. So proceeding with such a large portfolio will require that each project be carefully scoped and phased to align with staff capacity. The advantage of taking on those projects that we're recommending is that it will allow us to finish projects that have been started, it will deliver on provincial directives, and it will maximize the number of projects we can advance for council. So your leadership team here, represented tonight by our new CAO and your department directors, have given a lot of thought to this. There's been considerable discussion about the project portfolio. Forefront in our minds has been a desire to deliver on what we understand to be council's priorities and finding a balance with the project portfolio, not just in this year, but with what has been done previously. And that's been complemented also by professional responsibility to also consider staff capacity, funding availability, grant availability, and connection to other projects and work that council has assigned. So it's a lot to factor in, and it is all a rather delicate balancing act. There's clear interactions between the projects and also, as was actually mentioned earlier tonight as well, with some of the outstanding council resolutions and capital projects and other work that council directs. Despite our best efforts, we acknowledge that we don't always get it right, and council priority projects are ultimately your decision. Council does have options. You can approve the recommended approach, you can substitute projects, you could add or remove projects, you can adjust scope, you can modify timing. But of course, as we all know, choices also have implications, and this is no different. Each choice will have implications for timelines, costs, and service levels. So if council wishes to pursue a different path than what we've recommended, we suggest that you request a follow-up report so that you have full information on impacts before you make decisions. So in many cases, there could be substantial impacts. There might be a very few minor projects or some of the sub-options underneath the project options analyses, as has been set out, where there might be an opportunity to proceed in 2026 without triggering that more fulsome report back on implications. But if you're interested in any of those, we can certainly advise on whether that trigger is in place or not. Whatever projects you do select will be included in the draft 5-year financial plan, which will be presented early in the new year, and the public will have an opportunity to comment on that. There are interactions between the projects, so exactly what the budget request is that will be triggered by individual projects. And in some cases, we can take a good guess at it now. In other cases, it may need to be adjusted based on the unique interactions between the projects. So really, tonight's decisions are about focus and impact. By prioritizing strategically, we can ensure meaningful progress on projects that matter, projects that strengthen infrastructure, enhance services, and support a vibrant, resilient community. Your directors are here tonight to answer questions about any of the projects that have been completed, any that are in progress, or any that are on the table for consideration for future action. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bay, and for that excellent overview. So we have in front of us, obviously, reports that summarizes, and then the attachment one, which is the priority projects, is probably the primary piece of information. I thought through this, and I wasn't really clear because I don't know where people are sitting about how to structure the conversation. I think the simplest thing may just be a little bit less formal than normal conversation around the table. Obviously, we can't do a complete re-engineering and reorientation of the entire priorities in year 4 of a 4-year piece, especially when so many things are in midstream. That being said, I think this is our opportunity to look for some potential tweaks, reprioritization, removal, adding, et cetera, to this list. So with that, I think not having to sort of go quite through the same formal sort of asking questions, et cetera. I don't mind if we go around the table, if there's areas here that people sort of had flagged that maybe not necessarily, I want to do this, and we're going to stay away from declarative statements still, not try to avoid that, because we really are in the question period. But if there's areas that people said, hey, I was looking at this and I was wondering and maybe thinking this, we could do this, then I think it's helpful for us all to hear that. And if there's questions that might come out of that, we'll direct those to staff and we'll try and get some clarification of where things are at. So I'm happy to either go around the table if people appreciate that. I haven't, but if other people, and by all means, if there's other things that people wish to kind of touch on that aren't on attachment 1 or in other pages, then I think the same process would apply. But I'll happy to start with Councillor Braithwaite.
Actually, I have some more priority setting questions, perhaps, than putting what I think should be where. So I'm wondering if perhaps I could ask those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, so I guess my first question would be, how many of the through you, Chair, how many of the 2026 projects are mandatory due to our provincial legislation or grant commitments? And what I'm looking at there is which projects could be safely paused to avoid overloading our community building and planning department.
Mr. Bull. I'm not sure if you've organized them in a way that has them all conveniently grouped, but no, it's good. We'll see. I'm sure you can probably address most of that, Mr. Bull.
Thank you. So I'm looking at attachment 1, I think, and the first bit, right? Or
Yeah, I think the question was just anything that's sort of currently in our to-do list that is mandated by the province as opposed to
Good.
optional.
Thank you. Let me see. The Community Climate Action Plan is in part grant funded. And the Corporate Climate Action Plan, let me see. There's some work underway there. Then the mandated pre-zoning, I would say that's number 76. I think that's still in the realm of provincial requirements. And then the optimized development processes, that is something that the district has control over. And the only current grant funding is the Growing Communities funding that we have still a longer time for. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite?
Yeah, and then I think, so which, I think this is around costs and funding, so through you, Chair, or Mayor, it might be for our Director of Finance. And I'm just wondering which of these 2026 priorities have clear funding for the 5-year financial plan? Or it might be, sorry.
Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. If you look at the budget column, anywhere where the text is in black, it's already included in our 5-year financial plan. Where it's in green, it means it's not currently in our 5-year financial plan.
Thank you. And then I'm wondering if the Growing Communities funds could be used for the Cedar Hill Corner planning. So that would be number 93, I think.
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you. Through your worship, the Growing Communities funds could be used for that project.
Thanks. And then as far as, I'm wondering what the, through you, Mayor, what the operating impacts will the Parks Master Plan generate, if we know the answer to that?
Welcome back, Mrs. Lear. We're using all the desks today.
Through the mayor to Councillor Braithwaite, it would be too early to say what those operating implications would be from that project.
Thank you. I have 2 more questions, Mayor.
Yeah,
Through
please go
you, which projects most directly reduce our operational risk, like as far as infrastructure, facilities, and climate? Because I think that's probably an important area to focus on.
That's a big question. I'm going to probably give that to Ms. Bay to start, and you're welcome to. So the 3 areas of risk that you were asking about:
Infrastructure, facilities, and climate.
facilities, and climate.
It's a hard question, I know.
Your Worship, it's one of those awkward falls between departments and crosses over multiple departments. In terms of, just for clarification, are we referencing the in-progress projects specifically, Your Worship?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Okay. So there's anywhere there's involvement then probably of a building, but the design of a Carnarvon Park building would probably be impacted. The asset management plan, the indirectly, I guess, the active transportation program, the erosion prevention program, really, like you could look at that list and really all of them probably in one way or the other, either directly or indirectly do, maybe not the optimized development processes, since that's more of a service-oriented project.
Councillor Braithwaite?
Thank you. My last question would be then, and maybe this is a hard question to answer as well, but which of the projects align most strongly with the public feedback from the priority survey? If we know that information, please. Thank you.
Ms. Bay?
Your Worship, again, it's an excellent question. A little difficult to answer directly. I will note, however, that for each of the new projects, the project where we prepared project options analysis, where there is information through the community questionnaire that relates to those new projects, we have detailed what the feedback was from the community questionnaire directly in relation to each of those projects. So some of these projects are already underway. There may be indirect comments, but I'm just scanning the list here, and of the in-progress ones, nothing jumps out as being material, directly connected to feedback that we got through the annual questionnaire.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have, I guess, twofold. I have questions first, and then I have my wish list, I guess. I'll put it. But the first one is on the number 94, and that is in section 2B. So it said, I think on here it says page 13 of 151. Anyways, and that is about the public safety building feasibility. There was also included in that a reference to doing public engagement, and I would like clarification on if the what would be entailed in the public engagement. Would it be the location, the site, the cost, the design, really what form would the public engage? Because I think of it as being such a technical set of buildings that require expertise.
Thank you. I do note it says that this would if this advances, the next step would be council project sign off, which is usually where we sign off on the engagement. So I don't know that is that inaccurate? Okay, so yeah, at this point probably not determined. It'll be up to us. There'll be a recommendation coming to council, and we'll sign off on it.
Thank you for that clarification. And again, for the second one, I guess, number 14, the Parks Master Plan, which is then followed by the facilities. I would just like to know, because I don't attend any of those meetings, and so when we talk about the Parks Master Plan, does that include parks per se that everyone uses? Does it include also the playing fields? Just perhaps a clarification of non-familiar person with exactly what the language stands for. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Actually, I appreciate the question because I think there's some confusion about the Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan versus the Parks Master Plan versus there's a separate Cattle Point, et cetera. So maybe, Mr. Lee, if you don't mind, just take a moment to explain to us and to the public sort of what the anticipated staging of those phases is right now.
Sure, thank you. Through the mayor. So the original direction from council was to develop a Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan, which is essentially looking at all of the related programs, services, assets in those categories. Last month, I came to council to discuss the potential to essentially take the sort of a phased approach to working through that workload by starting with a master plan specific to parks, open spaces, natural assets. The specific scope of that is still to be determined, and that will be provided in a project sign-off report in the new year. The other plan that is identified in the council priority projects is an updated master plan for, or management plan for Uplands and Cattle Point. And so if you think of the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Master Plan is sort of a higher level plan. A Parks Master Plan is a component of that, focused on green assets and natural assets and open spaces. And then a much more detailed management plan will be developed for the Cattle Point and Uplands Park spaces. Now, there is currently a management plan for that park. It was done back, I believe, in 2018 or 2019. Staff are still working through that, and there are recommended actions that are still being carried out. However, that an update or refresh of that plan is on the list. So that will be, staff have considered undertaking that work after the Parks Master Plan is completed.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's because I'm never sure what is included in each component of it, so that clarifies it. So thank you. That's really helpful. Now kind of the wish list that I have is the first one being the active transportation program. I have been consistently asking for a more inclusive ATP that includes all aspects: walking, rolling, and transit. And when I speak of transit, I don't mean lobbying BC Transit to make changes to the transportation part of it, but I do include things like public benches near stops or shelters, and that as part of the program. And so I see on this, there is section 92 though, which is the sidewalk and pedestrian master plan. And that is on page 18 of 151, section 92, and it will have three elements to it. And I am wondering if there is a way that somehow those programs can be merged so that when we look at the active transportation in the district, that we actually are making it an inclusive program that offers someone who is using active transportation, whatever their preferred method of it is, that it does in fact include all members of the community and address the existing assets, which are primarily pedestrian and transit assets, some of them in quite poor condition, with new assets, so that we're getting a balance of maintaining existing and not just undertaking all new assets and leaving the existing assets for a later date. So I'm wondering if staff could talk about that. I did notice that there was quite an extensive workload depending on which options are presented. One was just, I guess, repair of sidewalks with no enhancements. The other one was to increase the funding that we would put towards it annually. And then the third, which would be to also improve some of the assets. So obviously extensive work, but I don't see how this can be left out of an active transportation plan. So what is the best way to bring them together?
Sure. I'll hand that over to Mr. Rennick. Welcome.
Thank you. Through the mayor. When the active transportation program was initially conceived long ago, when the district authorized an initial active transportation strategy in approximately 2011, that strategy had a number of cycling recommendations and a number of pedestrian recommendations. As that work was advanced, some of the lower hanging fruit sidewalk recommendations, such as upgrading of wheelchair curb cuts at select corners in the sidewalk network, were essentially operationalized. As little progress was made in implementing some of the cycling aspects of that plan, there was a push from council to add some additional dedicated funding towards cycling infrastructure. Ultimately, the engineering department's perspective was that a lot of these cycling projects also included traffic calming, which, while they did not directly replace sidewalk infrastructure, did overall bring a more pleasant pedestrian experience. For example, a lot of these projects, McNeil includes curb extensions and raised crosswalks as forms of traffic calming. However, recognizing that from certain members of council there was still a desire for dedicated sidewalk funding, there was a new budget created. I'm sorry, I'm really gonna. That's better. There was a new capital budget created last year specific to sidewalk enhancements. So that was actually to ensure that it was very clear and transparent what was going towards sidewalk infrastructure specifically and what was going towards traffic calming infrastructure generally. So it was not staff's intent to segregate active transportation, because I agree with Councillor Patterson that as per the provincial definition, active transportation is all modes of non-motorized vehicle transportation. Essentially, we were just looking to create some transparency for where those funds are specifically allocated, but one could argue that they're really two envelopes within the same broader program. Then as it came to prioritizing on sidewalk improvements, we reported to this council a few months ago that while there had been a pedestrian and sidewalk master plan developed, it didn't have anything that was actionable. It had a few locations where it said, here are some sample treatments of, you know, here's an area you might consider doing this, but it wasn't exhaustive. And so that's why we recommended a couple of delivery options to say, well, we could focus that sidewalk budget on repairs to what we have, or there were a couple of options where we could engage the community, because if it's council's desire to do an enhancement program, we feel that there has not currently been community engagement to help council understand where specifically you want to prioritize those enhancements. I'm sorry that turned into a bit of a ramble, but I hope that was helpful.
It's been a long process with many aspects, so I appreciate the summary. Anything else, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And on Section 6, potential new projects, again, page 18 of 115, the number 90 and 91. Number 90 is develop a deconstruction building relocation bylaw, and and 91 develop a tenant protection bylaw. Those are listed as potential new projects. My opinion is that on the understanding of what we are doing to adopt the new OCP and what may flow out of some of the new housing initiatives, my opinion is, at any rate, that certainly the deconstruction and relocation bylaw is imperative. The tenant protection bylaw, of course, is more specific to buildings, and we don't at this point know when those might occur. But I certainly think number 90 is something that, as a council, we should have some discussion about, because with the overall potential impact of removal of housing, the demolition waste could be considerable, and I think you can't have one plan without the other plan too. So certainly I would be looking to council to give guidance on that, but in my opinion, I think that they're almost necessary given what we will be undertaking in housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. I think those are the kind of comments that are helpful, so we can kind of contextualize where we might start considering our prioritization. Councillor Smart?
Thank you. My first, and I understand we're taking comments/questions right now. My first comment/question is with regards to attachment 1, actually, in Project 45, developing a program to improve diversity and inclusion. We recently found out that an incredible amount of work has happened operationally on this project, which is really exciting. I don't know, though, that we've yet had the opportunity to present that either publicly at a council meeting or share on Oak Bay Connects or share on social media, and I think that the work that staff has done in this project deserves to be celebrated, and so I would be looking potentially to take that off the list of confirmed completed projects just until that opportunity to share that work with the public has happened. So that's a comment.
I might just turn it to a quick question, because I wouldn't have thought of it that way. I would have thought, yes, it's good to celebrate the things that are concluded, but I'm not sure it means taking it off the list. Okay. So just procedurally, or how we're managing this, I might turn to Ms. Bay.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that could be accomplished with a council resolution asking us to place that information on Connect Oak Bay or otherwise publicize it. The information is available. It is not a significant piece of work to share that publicly, and that would stay consistent with council's previous direction and just add new direction on top of it.
That's great. Given it didn't have public input, it's probably better as a website portion, that is the Connect. Could we try and save that for public consultation related pieces? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just to clarify, because I'm not sure that I heard you correctly, were you saying yes on Oak Bay Connect or no on Oak Bay Connect, if you could just clarify?
We may just want to leave that to staff as to where the appropriate place is, but just Oak Bay Connect, because it's a place where we direct people for engagement, and following up on places they've done engagement. If it hasn't had an engagement capacity, it's maybe better for people just Googling DEI in Oak Bay to have it on the website as opposed to the connect.oak Bay, which is really specifically to that engagement. But that's my own thoughts, and I think maybe leaving it vague at this point, if you want to do it, is probably easiest.
Thank you for that clarification. My next comment would be towards the wish list items. And I guess my understanding today is that with these wish list items, we might be utilizing option 2 in the staff report, where we're suggesting for staff to come back and tell us the implications potentially of projects that we would consider, as opposed to voting today on to include them, because we actually need to hear from staff first what the implications of including them would be. So I just wanted to share that was my understanding with these wish list items, is that that's really what the ask would be, for staff to come back with more information. And so my 2 wish list items would be around just understanding if there's a way of starting the village planning process with this council. I saw various dates in this report. There was in our resolutions a comment that we might be able to begin it in Q1, but then there was another point in the report where it might not happen until 2027. And so knowing how much passion there was around this table for this group to start into that process, and also acknowledging our community's desire to densify in urban village centers, and I see it as a continuation of our OCP work, I would just love to know what the implications would be of looking at starting that during this council term. My second wish list item would be with regards to the Belker at B Street project. And my reason for bringing that up is just, again, knowing the community interest and passion around a particular design that's being presented. It might possibly be, and this was where staff could comment, a very low scope of work to begin with, but enough integration with the district to allow the community group to potentially run with the project. So I just hate to see that one continue to sit on the long list if it's potentially a small scope of work to begin with on a project that might be 5 or 10 years out. So those were my 2 wish list items to potentially have staff comment on including in this term. My next comment was with regards to the new project backgrounders in this report. I was hoping that today, with the 5 new project backgrounders, that we could have a conversation around this table just briefly about each one, and particularly following up on Councillor Patterson's comments. Each one of those has a couple options, and I think that now would be the time, whether or not we go ahead with those, to at least indicate at this table which option we would be likely to pursue, even if it ends up on a long list. So I just wanted to share my desire to have that conversation today, perhaps in a similar roundtable format. And my last comment is just with regards to the affordable housing option. That is one of the recommendations from staff. Again, I would love to not wait 6 months to see a potential project backgrounder on what we've been hearing from the community is an extremely vital part of providing the type of housing that we need in Oak Bay. I don't think a day passes right now without an email around, are we really going to do the hard work towards affordable housing? So if it's possible, again, to see what is just going to be an options analysis, perhaps in 3 or 4 months rather than 6 months, I would love to potentially modify that staff recommendation, and that is all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks, and thanks to my 2 colleagues for their comments. They're very important, and I agree that we should be looking at those as well. I kind of looked at my priority list a little bit differently. I tried to set for me what would be a realistic set of the 8 major projects that which is the maximum amount that staff have suggested, that I would look at. And the first one for me, or this is in no particular order, but it would be the Public Safety Building Feasibility Assessments, and that was CPP number 94 on 2B. And the reason why is that the aging police and fire building, the high risk, we need to understand the options before we have the funding commitments, I think. And it's really a feasibility only. It's no major spending yet, so that I think helps for me to have that there. The Parks Master Plan, which is CPP number 14 on section 3. I think for me, that's because of Willows, Carnarvon, and other parks are facing their end-of-life infrastructure. And we need to ensure that the parks planning is done before any major capital decisions are made. So that's really important. In saying that, I do have designed Carnarvon Park building on here as well, which is CCP number 15, because obviously that's at end of life, and that has been something that's been on the books for, I can't remember what we spoke about in the Parks, Rec and Culture building or meeting the other day, but it was many, many, many years. The OCP zoning implementation and required pre-zoning, which is CPP number 76 on 2A. And the reason I put that in there is obviously it's a mandatory provincial requirements. It needs to be done or we face compliance problems. And it focuses our staff on what's required, not what's on optional. My next one was the McNeil Bay Erosion Prevention Program, number 34, and that's in 2A. That for me is a real priority, and the reason why is that that's significant coastal risk, and the delay increases the cost, the long-term cost unbelievably, and as we've seen already in the last few terms on council, those costs have increased dramatically, but we can continue the planning on that, and I think the construction will be a future year. The Community Climate Action Plan, which is number 35 under 2A. And the reason I put that one on there is because it's tied to grant funding and it supports our climate goals and integrates with the OCP. It is Community Climate Action Plan number 35. It doesn't commit us to any capital spending as well, so that's not yet anyhow. And then I also had the active transportation, but my prioritization was similar to Councillor Patterson's, in that I prioritize it on the sidewalks and pedestrian safety, accessibility, etc. I think that it helps us to promote the active transportation, but it also fits in with, I think, what we hear a lot from the public in regards to them wanting, them consistently ranking sidewalks, etc., over other things. And then my last one, number 8, was the Cedar Hill Corner UVic pre-zoning and servicing planning, which is CPP number 93, and that's in section 6. And I think that it's the reason I put that on there, it's like a proactive approach avoids the reactive crisis decisions and aligns with our housing strategy, and it can be funded through the growing community funds, which we heard earlier. So that's mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. So I'm glad we're doing it this way because it just helps. We've all probably looked at this in a different way, and it's nice to kind of hear people's thought process. Councillor Appleton, over to you.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess really my questions and my quote-unquote wish list are essentially aligned, and they align with some of the previous comments that have been made, and really they focus on a couple of projects which are already have funding associated with them, as indicated here, and but are sort of on the bubble as to whether or not they would fit into Category 3, started in 2026, or into Category 4, 2027 or later. And the first one of those, which is both a question and I guess on my quote-unquote list, is with respect to the village plan. The village plan's been around and being sort of moved forward for a number of years based on various factors and various sort of influencing things in there. I guess what I'm looking for is, I guess I'm going to put the question to the community building and planning, essentially. I know that there's a ton of work to be wrapped up from the OCP update and relevant zoning work response to provincial directives in the first couple of quarters of 2026. So again, with the differing timelines, the different projections and I guess scoping that's laid out in the staff materials, I guess what I'm wondering is, even if we were to say, decide to change scheduling, this is right now village area plans, which is priority numbers 916, it's the first item under item 4, 2027 or later. Do we legitimately have an opportunity to advance components of the village planning process in 2026, given what's on the docket, because I too would like to see that advance in 2026. How feasible is this? What can we reasonably expect as far as probably Q3, Q4, as far as community building and planning's capacity?
I will hand that over to Mr. Bull. I think this touches on, I think, one of the big issues we've had this whole term is with all the changes that have come from the province, almost all of them have been fallen on the community building and planning department. So many internal projects have been essentially, well, deprioritized to manage those. But there's also still a lot ongoing, and so I appreciate the question on the village area plan. Maybe, is there any mechanism by which we can sort of have a targeted conversation about some of these internal projects, specifically to building and community building and planning going forward as well? Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, as it stands right now, if that project were to be lifted from the one list into another, something else would need to come off the other list probably, or definitely. We did give thought about it. We have thought about the village area plan as well, trying to think, well, is there something small or a starting point we could make? But we also recognize that particularly to start it fully and seriously and prepare for consultation, for example, that has quite a bit of a lead time, and we're quickly running out of time within this council period to do that. That said, yeah, if council decides that should be, or we need to look into what can we do next year. I think Ms. Hunt was referring to the report coming in January, where we take a wider look. Well, we actually bring back a few projects that have some changes, plus that wider look. This could be included then to look at what are the trade-offs. If council asks for this particular project to be looked at, and maybe it would also be helpful for my department to know what is then, is there a consensus about another project that is less relevant or pressing that could be delayed. Thank you.
Councillor Appleton?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship, and that comment's useful. This is, of course, the rub is that, you know, I don't look at anything that is on Schedule 2A for projects continuing that I would be inclined to remove or delay in favor of that specific project. Obviously, everything that community building and planning is working on is either a provincial mandate or something key in and around that. So it's difficult for me to make that call. I guess maybe there's a bit of an ancillary question here, which is a bit of a sidebar to that, but with respect to essentially there are sort of different components within community building and planning that are working on the climate file versus the sort of building and zoning side of things. Do I have that correct?
Mr. Bull?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for you. Yes, so between the different roles that we have created over the past years, there's basically dedicated resources to the climate field and dedicated resources to housing in terms of time and capacity for projects. And but yeah, if needed, there is some flexibility there to look at, can things move around depending on where time is made available. So thank you.
Continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. So in terms of the desire or the more qualitative side of your question as far as how these things might work, I certainly understand that this system is not designed to say, well, these things are in this priority, but then this thing is also a priority under certain circumstances. It's difficult to say, advance this component as soon as possible, etc. I think that staff already know, that that's where things should go. I guess my desire or my hope would be that essentially we can get to the village planning process even in a modest or initial way in 2026, if that's the way that the workload plays out. So building and planning has several quarters worth of work to do. I hope that we have a touch point that can allow us to sort of revisit that, or at least talk about what is feasible in an initial phase to talk about that village plan. I really believe that that's something that the public really wants us to be examining. So I would just like us to be on it as quickly as humanly possible, Your Worship.
Ms. Bay looked like she was reaching for the microphone, so I'll
Your Worship, maybe this is a good time for me just to reiterate that we do have 2 touch points each year, one now and then one mid-year. And so that is certainly one of the things that we could report out on in mid-year is where, how things are going with planning with respect to each of their projects. That is the intent of the mid-year touch point, is to report out on progress on that year's initiatives and report out on whether there is in fact scoping out to be potential that we hadn't anticipated. That would certainly be a time when we would flag that.
Thank you, Worship. And I would take the opportunity, I appreciate Ms. Bay's comments. I would take the opportunity to respond to the comment that you made, which I agree with, which is to say that, you know, I'm definitely very keen on having capacity for community building and planning to return to work essentially on projects which were directed by this council, that were generated around this council table, the village planning process being one of them, to be able to pick those back up as soon as possible once we have gotten on the other side of provincially mandated work that community building and planning has had so much work to do around. So I do appreciate that comment. The second component that I had is actually right next to it, and it is another one of these ones that's on the bubble in section 4, which is 2655, which is the Bowker Creek Public Walkway. And so what I'm curious about, so it's then the question and then the sort of the overall intent. But as has already been mentioned, the status sort of proposes that preparing a project sign-off and determining project scope and timing. Is there the possibility to explore the preliminary scope, timing, and I guess what you would call initial logistical work around that, given the fact that there is budget associated with it? In short, what can be done in 2026 that would help us get ready for that project? I think that keys in really well with some of the comments that have already been made around the table about pedestrian networks, walking paths, and these types of things. It's an important pedestrian connection between, you know, the Fort and Foul Bay intersection and down to some areas that we've already done extensive work on. Folks are already walking through the parking lot as it is, and it presents a real important opportunity to improve that area of Bowker Creek. So I think that's a really significant pedestrian connection that I'd really be interested to see what could we do initially in 2026 that might get us ready to help designing that project.
Thank you. Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, through the mayor. If council would like to advance some portion of that work, I think that passing a motion to have staff come back with a council project sign-off that would at least do some preliminary scoping and allow us to look at what would the resource implications be, I think would be the appropriate ask if council would like to advance on that one.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Rennick. Go ahead, Councilor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So then my next question is about the mechanics of that. I would be interested in making such a motion and having that information come back. I guess this would be for the larger corporate services group, and what format would we receive that and then potentially direct that action be taken? What would the procedure be as far as receiving that back? Essentially we'd be adding it onto essentially at list 6, I guess, is what we would be doing and evaluating at that point. So would we be evaluating all the projects on list 6, or would we have the ability to just pull something off of there? Just kind of wondering about how that would happen before the end of this council term.
Sure, I'll ask that question of staff. I would think, since we're asking for a project sign-off which would outline the impacts, options, et cetera, for it, I think that would be, it wouldn't be committing anything at this point, so I just want to hear from staff about how that would actually get brought forward. Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I remember correctly, this one has already had the equivalent of a project options analysis, which is what Section 6 would do. So to get the council project sign-off, it is essentially, with the budget already allocated, it would then make it into a 2026 a council priority project to be initiated in 2026, because the first step of the project would be the preparation of that council project sign-off. I guess staff would, from a resource planning perspective, anticipate that we're not, at this point, assigning hours to it until we have council direction to do so. So it does put it in a little bit of that tenuous state, because we wouldn't know whether for sure it's going ahead until council has reviewed the council project sign-off, if what I'm hearing is correct. But many of these projects are delivered over multiple years, so if it's council's direction and expectation, and we have that understanding that at this point it's just a request for the council project sign-off to come forward and for things to be determined subsequent to that in terms of impact, I think that's something staff could do.
Thank you. Just for clarification, it's showing as it has a dollar amount essentially attached to it, but not actually funded at this point. So if there was a motion to kind of do that, would that be essentially would that slide into the budgeting process?
Your Worship, I'm wondering if perhaps there's two Bowker kind of related projects.
Sure, I'm looking at section 426/55.
Yeah, so that one has budget assigned to it, and so that the funding is there. What's not there is the staff
black
allocation.
is funded,
Yes.
green is not funded. My apologies. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. So I appreciate that context. So just for clarity, we're talking about something coming back as a standalone item that council would then direct the usage of staff resources for.
Ms. Bay?
Your Worship, we would be bringing forward a council project sign-off, which would detail what the resourcing implications would be from a staffing perspective. And there might be a number of options embedded therein as to other project approaches, the scoping, the timing, and so forth. The budget's already been set, so we would be preparing that council project sign-off within the context of that approved budget.
Councillor Appleton?
No, as far as any sort of suggestions for modifications to what we've got in front of us, that would be it from me, Your Worship. I do appreciate, I did have a broader question already answered by Ms. Bay just about sort of the staging of projects, how you manage 13 projects within an 8 to 10 project container, so I appreciate that context. That's important, which of course is always a process that we're undergoing. But I am returning to a component that we saw earlier and just looking at the long list of the general list of projects. I think casting our minds through the process suggested earlier to scope these down, remove anything that we think is unfeasible, or to sort of generally unify our consideration of some of these items, I think is really useful. So thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Watson?
Yeah, so many good things to do, so many worthwhile projects, so little time, and so many strained resources. I am really, it's been helpful to hear what other people are saying. The only thing that I really came here tonight feeling very passionate about in terms of raising its priority was the village planning process, and the rest of it, I'm quite open to kind of what falls out from our discussion, but I'll just speak to that for a little bit. And I understand that overall it's just one more in the large portfolio of things that are assigned to community building and planning. But any way that we can make it happen in some way starting in 2026, I think is really vital for the community. It's a very long-wanted and long-awaited piece of work. It results in very tangible and visual and inspirational things for the community, and sparks excitement. It will spark excitement in the community about what's coming next. Other exercises which are like the development of plans are so fundamental and important, but they don't necessarily do that. And it would be nice to have something in our 2026 work plan that really did do that for our community. And I think it's an example of something that actually draws community-wide interest. It's not neighborhood specific. It's not about a particular park or. So I'm just really making a pitch for finding some way to actually get that off the ground in some way in 2026. And the rest of it, I'm quite open to, flexibility and discussion. There was, yeah. So that's all I wanted to say right now.
That's great, Councillor Watson. I've never be critical of having a short comment. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Thanks very much, and thank you again for all of this work. It's a little overwhelming, I think. I really appreciate those projects that have been deemed complete, and I note that the update zoning bylaw to accommodate SSMU zoning does require some follow-up, and that's not surprising with the emphasis on housing. Moving on to section 1, number 79, I think that's an important project that's responding to increased development interest. I think that the community is feeling that pressure now, and as the expectations around housing ramp up, I think that's a really important priority, and I'm glad that there is resourcing for new positions, and that has been budgeted. Can you tell me how much that budget is? I'm sorry, did I not? I must have missed it, but I just wondered if I could make a note.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Bold, through you, Mayor.
Yep, Mr. Bull, do you? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. It takes me a moment. I can pull that up.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go on, and then you can just cut me off quickly. The next one that I had marked, and it's very obvious, but it's number 47 under 2A, and that's seeking Songhees and Esquimalt Nations potential business partners and community input into the future of Turkey Head. For me, that has a sense of urgency, and I think it's something that we really need to focus on, and I'm appreciative of the ability to be able to do that, and thank you for that. The other one, moving on, is under section 4, and that is number 54, which is the Sitchanal Willows Shared Knowledge Planning Project. And I'm mindful of the notes adjacent to that section. But again, a sense of urgency. We've talked about this for quite a long time. I think this is where managing expectations is quite critical, both for our community and the Indigenous communities. And then moving on to section 5, these two really jumped out at me. Sorry, 3. One was develop secondary suites incentive program. I think that's a really important one, and I know it's not funded at the moment, but I hope it will be. Number 7, update the zoning bylaw. I have talked about this for a number of years. I think the last 2 terms. I had said that pushing this out or deferring it to 2028 did not seem wise, and under all the development pressure now that we're facing, I'm hoping that we can expedite that work somehow. I realize it requires more bodies and more money, but I think that is a critical piece of work that needs to be done. And then number 83, establishing a heritage procedures bylaw. I think that's really important, given, again, the development pressure that we are starting to feel and see in Oak Bay. And then I just had a question under number 5. It says establish a heritage planner service. Could someone just clarify that for me through you to Mr. Bowl?
Sure, thank you. I can probably clarify that. That came out of a recommendation from the Heritage Commission on potential changes.
I was just curious about
Council.
the service piece.
Okay.
Rather than just a heritage planner. Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
It came as a recommendation, and council essentially put it on a long
Yeah,
list.
and I appreciate it. I support that. And the others are consistent with, I think, my colleagues' comments. Developing a deconstruction building relocation bylaw, developing a tenant protection bylaw. That's particularly important for secondary suites. And also developing implementation plan for pedestrian sidewalk master plan. And I think my only outstanding question was on the money. Sorry, not all the money pertaining to my previous question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll keep mine fairly short. Thank you. I really appreciate the comments that have been made so far. If I go through the attachment 1, I think one that's jumped out at me is the in-progress process. There's a prepare an options analysis for a potential temporary off-leash dog park. Just curious it says that it's sort of underway. There'll be some report coming back to the park rec thing. This is one of that, can tend to open up a can of worms. I think we ended up here largely because we didn't want to tackle off-leash dog parks as a whole, and so there was consideration that maybe we could look at a temporary one and do that. So I'm just, Mr. Soulier, what is the status of that? And because it may be one of those projects that we actually, if it's not too far along, we may not want to continue with, but to you.
Through Mr. Mayor, the project is still very much in its early phase. Staff are scoping out what that will look like, and then, as noted in the report, intend to engage the Parks, Rec, and Culture Advisory Committee in a discussion around a potential, starting with a longer list, getting to a shorter list, and some of the criteria that might be considered in that. The report to council will outline sort of some options around how to engage the community in some of the technical considerations that would be involved in that. But yeah, to your question, still very early in the project.
I'm just having witnessed what Sanish went through in that process. It'll have a lot of input, even on a temporary basis as it opens up the discussion. So I'm flagging it as one of those ones that maybe that's not, if we have other master planning processes underway, may not be the best. I appreciated Councilor Braithwaite's, her list of priority pieces there. It's hard to argue with with many of those. They're essentially ones that we have to get done. So I think my questions would be the sidewalks. Having heard the answer, I'm not sure that we're not doing that, but I appreciate we have a place to talk to that later. I agree in the comment that, I think we need to just, again, flag how important concluding the future of Turkey Head, Spehung, in the marina space, that is super critical, and I appreciate there is significant work ongoing right now, but just want to make sure that is sort of almost flagged as a key one. Yeah, the public safety feasibility assessment, I think, is also super critical. We just need to understand what we need and what the options are. And then obviously the Cedar Hill Corner is obviously a critical one, but I think we're all in agreement that has to happen. In the village area plan, I agree, and I'm heartened to hear that people still want to see that kind of advance, and so I think this may be something that we might maybe hear, maybe at another meeting, have a little talk about. I do think there may be some things that could start. We could do maybe a directed consultation with the business community in the villages to get an understanding of what their expectations of scope are. We could, there's already been some initial discussions with some of the larger landlords in the area. They've expressed some interest in sort of providing their level of interest and timelines for development and stuff that might be helpful for staff to know. So there may be some things that we could work on in the intervening time. And it doesn't meet, I think, Councillor Watson, your point that this is a point of a lot of public interest, but that is also, that requires a more structured conversation, and maybe there's some things that we could do to give some baseline information. I appreciated the conversation about the Bowker Creek to B Street. I think that's certainly worth exploring as a visible project that I think would be appreciated by the community. I do know it's complicated because of the parking lot and things, but worth looking at. And the other one that's on my list under 4, this is number 82, is that I hadn't heard, was the creation of a standards of maintenance bylaw for heritage designated properties. We're seeing a few very visible heritage designated properties that are starting to decline, and we have no tools right now to kind of, outside of incentives of grants, to manage that, and it's one of those ones that these are in place in many jurisdictions and may be a relatively low-hanging fruit to do. Interestingly, I had the opposite to Councillor Green. I was thinking maybe we just strike the secondary suites incentive program, given how much, how easy it is now to actually do that and how much awareness there is. It may not be necessary to have an incentive program for it. It gets complicated to manage and things. And what else did I have on my notes here? I do think there is, to Councillor Patterson's initial point, other people spoke to it briefly, but I think as we're looking at redevelopment, that tenant protection bylaw is going to be a really important piece. I think we're not doing our duty if we don't consider that. And the affordability strategy, which isn't really on this list, I'm not sure where that is on this list, if it is a point, I think, of discussion, at least, about how that fits into our timelines. I'm just going to go through other people's notes. Is there anything else? No, I think that's pretty much it. So Yeah, I'll just finish with a comment that I really appreciate. This is a big list with all broken out in various ways with, it's nice to see all the, where things are budgeted, where they're not, and where we might, and may or may not, progress some of these projects, so. Having sort of had a bit of a roundtable, and before we get to sort of maybe coalescing and giving some direction, Mr. Bull, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Sorry to ask for the mic, but I did have an answer to Councillor
Oh, great.
Green's question.
Thank you.
The original budget for the responding to increased development interest was 250,000, and of that, for in this year, we have 58,500 left or reserve still, and that has been used to for extra staff resources, and some of those resources have been phased in. So initially paid through growing communities funding, but gradually kind of shifting the funding to increase development revenue. So that's how that budget has been used. So yeah, if we use the current year amount fully, then the project is done, and that's why it's noted as completed. So that's the background and the budget numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Bull.
So for those who are online, we don't have a lot of people in the room tonight. So if anybody online wishes to speak to items 5.1, this is the fourth quarter council priorities update and review. You've been listening, you've heard the conversation. We're going through this list and contemplating how we may or may not adjust some of the priorities. I see a couple of hands have popped up online. I'll go first to Mr. Zelka and then Mark. Please go ahead. Just if you just state your name and municipality of residence for the record, and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Okay, that's great. My name is Eric Zelka. I live, work, play, and own land in the North Henderson part of Oak Bay. I want to start by offering sincere thanks to the dedicated work that you all do in caring for the District of Oak Bay. Your focus on maintaining the stability and unique quality of life in our community, while at the same time being fiscally prudent, is deeply appreciated. Reflecting on Attachment 3 Community Questionnaire, that's part of the staff report here, and I see that it's informing the multi-part motion. I'm here tonight to respectfully request that Council consider adding, maybe by an amendment from one of you, a new time-sensitive and critical priority that may touch upon the forthcoming budget discussions, specifically related to safeguarding the long-term legal stability and clarity of our district and its residents. After the recent community questionnaire was completed, came the recent Cowichan Nations land title case decision in late summer 2025. As you know, the ruling has led to public appeals from both Federal Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Rebecca Alty and the BC Attorney General Minister. Minister Alty was explicit, explaining that, and I quote, "Further legal clarity is required to address the decision's potentially significant nationwide implications, particularly related to private property rights. The stability of fee simple land ownership underpins the financial security of every Oak Bay taxpayer." This is motherhood and apple pie statements here. "Therefore, I ask the District of Oak Bay to consider becoming an intervener in this case, ideally in collaboration with other local authorities in BC, perhaps through the UBCM. Who else but this council should be working proactively to protect the fundamental rights of its citizens?" And Chair, if you will allow me, I have a related second request, or the second request prior.
Yep, please go ahead.
Mayor, thank you so much. My second request is for the strict standardization of the land acknowledgements, is a suggestion, the land acknowledgement offered by the district. This priority is either new or it's part of the Truth and Reconciliation one that's on page 4 of the staff report PDF. I contend that this standardization, I should say this need for standardization was highlighted earlier this year in the CAO posting, the Chief Administrative Officer's posting on the District of Oak Bay's website. You may have to go back to see it, and I have a copy I can provide for you. In that posting, it described the lands here as traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory. This is the first I have ever heard of Oak Bay District officially suggesting that district lands are unceded. As you know, in the 1965 2005 Supreme Court of Canada case, Regina versus White and Bob, the Douglas Papers were unanimously declared to be treaties in the meaning of that term. In fact, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations themselves made clear that the foundation of their laws on their reserves is founded in the Canadian Constitution and the Douglas Treaties. I believe we must not, through inconsistent public statements, appear to rewrite a settled Supreme Court of Canada decision. I believe we must prioritize legal precision. I respectfully ask that through you, we adopt standardized acknowledgement language that consistently reflects all parties' relationships as defined by the Douglas Treaties and the later treaties, such as the Temex Treaty. Council, I urge you to conclude both of these priorities in the intervenor status and the acknowledgement standardization in either this motion and potentially your upcoming budget discussions. Thank you so much again for your time and your service to the community. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zelka. You are correct, and we do use the standardization land acknowledgement that has been, reviewed and approved by our local First Nations, and reflects your comments. Sometimes using external contractors may use their own language in some things. I think that must have been the case in that posting, but appreciate the comment. As to the intervenor status, I'll leave that, it probably needs a more in-depth of thought than this table, but certainly UBCM I know has shown some interest in it, and that would be part of that. I have Rachel Mark is showing on my screen here. If you could unmute yourself and speak to, there you are.
Can you hear me okay?
We can. If you just state your name and municipality for the record, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Rachel Mark. I'm a resident of Oak Bay. So recognizing there are multiple projects on your list and a limited capacity both fiscally and operationally among staff, I'd like to speak to the need for pedestrian infrastructure implementation. So when the 2024 community survey results were released, the ranking of active transportation infrastructure as the lowest capital project by over 71% of respondents was quickly dismissed by many as a methodological flaw. To further clarify, this year's survey, which just came out and is a part of the agenda package, split cycling from pedestrian infrastructure in the questions. As you have the results in front of you, 50% of respondents rank cycling infrastructure as unimportant, compared to 12% ranking pedestrian infrastructure as unimportant. And by contrast, 79% rank pedestrian infrastructure as important, compared to 37% ranking cycling infrastructure as important. In addition, in the past year, 14% indicated that they cycled or rolled at least once per day, compared to 59% who walk or wheeled at least once per day. But also important to acknowledge is that 42% never cycled or rolled in the last year, and that's nearly half of the population sample. The recent active transportation public engagement sessions felt as though pedestrian infrastructure was really only paid lip service, with the majority of questions and time being spent on cycling plans. The data clearly suggests that Oak Bay residents see the need for pedestrian infrastructure upgrades. Isolating pedestrians from cycling is clearly a niche choice, limiting impact to a small portion of residents rather than spreading tax dollars to the larger population who walk and wheel daily. To finish, I will read to you an excerpt of an email I sent to each of you this past June. My mother-in-law resides in Oak Bay on Mountjoy Avenue, just off Central. On Monday evening, she was walking her dog when she took a fall on the street's shoulder area, resulting in serious injuries. The one side of her face was smashed, bruised, and swollen, and she fractured the orbital bone that makes up her eye socket. After going unconscious, a passerby found her and was able to call 911 and her family. Given she's on blood thinners, she's incredibly lucky that she didn't have a brain bleed, and she's still recovering from these injuries almost 6 months later. I'm writing to you because, as you may or may not know, Mountjoy has no sidewalks. The shoulder of the road is unkept and filled with large rocks. The surrounding streets where she walks her dogs, including Central Avenue, have narrow, slanted sidewalks in terrible condition. I was never aware of the condition of the pedestrian infrastructure, or I could say lack of infrastructure, because I, like most of you, are mostly able-bodied. I've taken for granted the ability to navigate uneven and poorly kept surfaces with little attention. However, after this event, I'm acutely aware of the risk that these sidewalks, or again, lack of sidewalks, provide. After my mother-in-law's fall, a neighbor shared the experience of another local community member who fell in the same area and had a spiral fracture in his femur. For a senior, this can be a matter of living independently or not. I would imagine that falls on Oak Bay sidewalks are much more common than you even know. Finishing, rates of walking are far greater than cycling, and yet millions of dollars for cycling infrastructure have been allocated over the next many years. This is important for our community, as is pedestrian infrastructure. The prioritization of cycling is not inclusive, and it's not aligned with the needs of residents. It also disregards a focus on Oak Bay's most vulnerable, who rely on quality walking infrastructure for their mobility. Active transportation, I believe, truly needs to be inclusive for all modes, including cycling and walking. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Mark. Anybody else from the public wishing to speak? I don't have any other hands raised at this time, but I will give an opportunity if anybody wishes to use the React tab or the Raise Hand tab to raise your hand within the app. I don't see anybody in the chambers or online indicating they wish to speak. So thank you to the public who have joined us tonight and spoken. I will come back to this table now to seek some direction from council. We have a series of recommendations here from staff, but we've also had a bit of a discussion around some of the potential priorities. So I haven't yet had, maybe some of you have had a chance to review the recommended language and then consider some potential changes to those in response to some of the conversation. But I may also seek direction from staff as to how we might want to manage that if there are any significant changes being asked. So I guess the first one, and I think Councillor Smart, you had indicated you might want to not see that the DEI work as completed, but then we talked and it sounded like it could go on to that could be shared as a point of information. So what I might do is, because I think there was a request from staff that we have a direction from council to do that. So I just want to make sure. I'm not sure where I should go with that, because Ms. Bay suggested we need to do it through a motion, but it's kind of one of those things I don't know that needs to be. Ms. Hunt?
Yes, to your worship, I think we can take that as direction. We don't need a motion, so we will make sure that the website is updated.
So this is to reflect the work ongoing around DEI and other accessibility.
Accessibility.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll make the motion that council deem complete those projects listed in attachment 1, section 1.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion or changes on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed.
And then I'll make a motion that staff be directed to add completion of a public safety building feasibility assessment to the council priority plan as CCP number 94 for advancement in 2026.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. I'm not going to seek motivation. I just want to see if there's anybody around the table who has questions or concerns, in which case I'll happy to take motivation and then move on. Otherwise, I'll take this as a... Okay, I think I'm going to call the question then. Oh, sorry. Yeah, please go ahead, Councilor.
Yes, may I just want to ask a question about the end result of all of this. When we were having our first round of discussion, Councillor Braithwaite actually had a number in mind of how many things should be on this list for 2026. Is that where we're trying to get to? Like 13, I mean, staff are, it depends which departments they're in, but we know there's a maximum, and we also know it depends on how much the capacity within departments, so it's not like that they can be spread over like evenly over the whole organization. So is that part of the objective here, or?
Sure, that's a good question. My take of this one is work underway, but it needs some consultation piece. So it's becoming a council priority project essentially. But Ms. Bay, perhaps you can better answer the question in terms of the number of projects.
Thank you, Your Worship. Technically, our capacity is 8 to 10 to deliver on efficiently. And what we're saying is if we do 13, it would be acknowledging that each of those projects' timelines would be prolonged. And that would be reflected in new council project sign-offs for where the projects haven't yet been signed off on, where council has already signed off on the projects by approving more than 8 to 10. You'd be tacitly endorsing that those timelines are going to be longer than what was previously signed off on. So it's really a matter of how promptly council wishes to discuss or to see some of these completed. If projects are added beyond the 13 without taking any other projects off, then that just further compounds. And in cases where there might be cases where we simply hit that breaking point of where it's not possible. With respect to adding a project like the village area plans, I think what was noted earlier on is that that would come as reflected in the report. We would be coming back with a report from planning early in the new year in terms of what the capacity is in planning, and then that report would reflect whatever council decisions are made tonight in terms of what the implications are.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just to confirm the process then, if we don't make motions as per option 2, which is the option 2 is where we add and subtract things, then the assumption is that we're going ahead with the 13 projects. So can I just have clarification that we'll deal with the sort of option 2 aspects after we go through this list of recommendations?
So that question to staff, just to make sure that we're all clear, because I'm not 100% sure I'm clear that by doing this, we're assuming all 13. I think there's these are some of the motions we're dealing with right now. But Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. So as you're moving through this list, yes, the suggestion would be if you're not in support or any individual councillor is not in support of any of these projects advancing, now would be the time to say that. There's additional projects here that are underway right now that there's no resolution directly addressing the ones that are underway. This list here deals with really the new projects. So if council is wanting to free up capacity by removing projects from 2A and 2B list, or 2A list I guess it would be, in order to take on new projects, that could be dealt with as an additional resolution once council has completed these.
Thank you, although I may suggest that may have to be reversed, because some of these may have to have something removed before we can cogently add it, so I may see some dual motions to say, oh, remove this and add this, just to kind of give some of that clarity. Anything else, Councillor Smart?
No, I'm confident understanding what Ms. Bay has said, but the recent words that you've said make me confused again.
Okay, then ignore me and listen to Ms. Bay. That's my strong advice. Councillor Appleton.
Just following on that, Your Worship, a question from Ms. Bay's comments. It obviously, the components under, it is, I guess, implied under option 1 in the staff report. It doesn't specifically reference the items on 2A, which are in progress council priority reports. These will be the ones considered to be going forward if quote-unquote capacity was desired to take on more projects. Whatever project that was quote-unquote added would have to essentially be balanced off with capacity in the same department. So I would assume, removing, preparing an options analysis for a off-leash dog park, should that be removed, it does not benefit capacity in community building and planning, for instance. So it would have to be commensurate with what you were looking to accomplish, if I understand that correctly.
Ms. Bay?
Yes, Your Worship, just to confirm, there's an implicit assumption here that the projects in 2A would continue unless otherwise directed by council.
Sorry, Councillor, I lost my speakingness. I had Councillor Smart, and then is there anybody else speaking? Okay, so right now we have a motion which is to add completion of public safety building feasibility assessment. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed, that carries.
I'll move that staff be directed to initiate a Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan CCP number 14 in 2026 with the first phase to focus on a Parks Master Plan.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, thank you. I will raise and it's certainly not necessary, but I'm raising it, is a consideration of the temporary off-leash dog park just coming off of that and allowing more staff capacity for the parks master planning process. Councillor Smart?
I would be happy to make an amendment in that regards to add to this motion.
Yeah, I might, because it's not directly related, I might take the motion now and then I might seek a motion arising from that to see if that's a will. And we can debate them a little bit separately, because in this case, we don't need to have those two aligned. It's just a potential. Any discussion on that in terms of the initiating the master plan process? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed?
And I'll move that staff be.
I'm going to seek if there is an interest in doing a motion arising to remove the temporary dog leash from 2A. Then I think I wouldn't mind having that quick discussion and seeing if that's a will of council.
I would move that the option analysis for a dog park council priority project number 18 be placed on the long list.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you. This is really just, thank you. I think it's worth having a quick talk about it. I'm just going off of my spidey sense in 2026 of things that we have to work on. My concern, sorry, I'm taking on the motivation on this one, but I just think if we're going to do a park master planning process and go through that, my concern here is that as soon as we separate out and talk about even a temporary dog off leash thing, it's going to dominate the conversation. The conversation can happen in the park master planning process, but I think having it as a separate piece, I appreciate why it was peeled out, because we sort of decided not to do a big plan, but I think to me, we would probably have more success in the park master planning process without this involved. Councillor Appleton?
Speaking to the motion on the floor, yeah, absolutely concur with the comments made to date. I think the process has a ton of value to it, but I agree with some of the comments made already about where it has the potential to go. I think this is an options analysis for temporary off-leash dog park, coming down to analysis of options, coming down to the park level. And inevitably that drives towards the facility is suitable for park A, B, and C. That ends up becoming a huge discussion in the community and may or may not be, and probably is not going to be compatible with a parks master planning process that's contemplated in the previous motion. So to properly engage the public on this is going to be really challenging without the parks master plan piece already in place. So I would be hesitant to get down to a picking suitable parks off a map for a trial process when the parks master plan process was underway. So I think that this is eminently reasonable.
So the motion on the floor right now is in section 2A, removal of the option 18, prepare an options analysis for potential temporary off-leash dog park, and move it to the long list. Seeing no other discussion, I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries.
So I'll move that staff be directed to add advancement of infrastructure planning to support pre-zoning for Cedar Hill Corner to the council priority plan as CPP number 93.
Moved and seconded. I have just one question on this one, and it's the wording of this really speaks to infrastructure planning, but there is a community building and planning aspect of a significant master planning process like is being contemplated by the University of Victoria. So just so I understand what it is that this is containing, and is it sufficient to support the master planning process that UVic is considering going forward? Ms. Bay?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I don't think there'd be any objection to deleting the word infrastructure from there. If there's a desire to encompass a broader planning concept. But the main piece of work that the district would be doing in terms of and funding would be the infrastructure piece, and the master planning work would be done by UVic and supported by the districts. So our role really with respect to the master planning process wouldn't be to be doing it, but to assisting in developing the terms of reference, reviewing the material, and supporting that process. But we would be initiating the infrastructure piece, and that's the part that is set out and budgeted for in the project options analysis.
Thank you for that, and I just pointed out, there is, of course, the advanced planning to support pre-zoning for City Hall Corner as a separate building and planning piece, so that doesn't have a motion attached to it, and no budget. So I guess the question here is, does that, in section 3, recommended to be started in 2026, is that captured by this motion?
Yes, Your Worship. This one was a bit odd in terms of a place to put it, because there's really two drivers for it. Council had asked for a project options analysis to be prepared, so it's included in the section 6, as well as captured in section 3, because it was one of the projects that staff actually were recommending to be advanced in 2026. But it would be per the details that are spelled out in the project options analysis.
Okay. So just so my thought on this is probably to strike the word infrastructure and capture this as a yes, we want you to do, because we don't know exactly what that is at this point, but it does, just for everybody's awareness, then it does essentially capture that portion. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Ms. Bay. I just wondered if you could clarify the sort of ratio of work between community building and planning and engineering department. Is it mostly in community building and planning? Thank you.
Your Worship, maybe if I just take an initial stab at that. The infrastructure work would be done by engineering and public works, and the supporting the UVic master planning process would be done primarily by the planning department.
Is that sufficient?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Then just to clarify, it's a pretty 50-50 kind of. I just want to understand, I guess, the capacity as we're looking at balancing out our asks today. I just want to understand if that project is kind of equally in both departments or 90% in one. Thank you.
Mr. Rennick?
Thank you, through the mayor. It's maybe 50-50, maybe a little bit more on the building and planning side, maybe a little bit more on the engineering side. Mr. Boole and I were unable to come to a conclusion on that, but I would not see it as something that disproportionately affects one of the departments more than the other.
Thank you. May I seek a motion from council to direct an arm wrestling match to determine sorry, Mr. Boole.
Thank you, Mayor. I also would like to add, maybe that's also part of what you're wondering about, but it is substantial work, because it's fairly complex. There's probably not that much time, and it also depends a bit on what the university brings forward. I think I spoke with my counterpart there. They're definitely interested to get as far as possible in this process, and so it's going to be taking substantial time. That's why it's appropriate that it has a council priority project status. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know there are certainly some of these very large projects will have funding come from the applicant or the thing to help fund some of the internal, assets and stuff like that is possible as well. So I think we're a little uncertain at this point. Procedurally, I think, I just want to make sure I'm clear though. Procedurally, if we move this with the striking of the word infrastructure, this essentially moves forward that section 6 piece to support the master planning process. Perfect. Councillor Watson?
Yes, sorry, I just need some clarification because I may be losing the plot here. This project is listed twice in our package, one as a new project and as a potential new project. It's described slightly differently in both places, and so I am struggling a little bit to know what we're actually being asked to do right now. I see a distinction between the advanced planning with the infrastructure focus and the bit that comes next if and when UVic actually does move forward with good intention and will and some energy to require the next part, and that takes them having done their kind of master plan bit. So I just wasn't sure about the pre-zone context, like we would only pre-zone in response to some work that we actually got from the in effect our partner, right? So which is the more accurate on page, is it the is it the category 3 or the category 6 project that we're looking at right here?
Go ahead, Ms. Bay.
Thank you, Your Worship, and apologies for the inconsistency. We were scrambling at the last minute as we were adjusting to the situation as it was evolving, as the zoning and OCP discussions were happening, and we were amending reports on the fly to make this deadline. So, in response to your question, the correct terminology would be what was reflected in the project options analysis: advanced planning to support pre-zoning for Cedar Hill Corner.
Motion that we have in front of us right now. So the mover included the word infrastructure, so I'm just going to suggest, is there willingness from the mover and seconder to strike that? Okay. So the motion that's in front of us right now is that staff be directed to add advancement of planning to support pre-zoning for Cedar Hill Corner to the council priority plan as a CPP 93. Are we comfortable with that? And that does come with the, as noted, with the more detailed document at the behind it. Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor
Yes,
Patterson.
just following up on Councillor Watson, because I was confused by those two. I got a little bit lost in this, but so then that would be what we are advancing is 93 under section 3, new council priorities, correct?
Yeah, section 93 is also under section 6.
Yeah, I know, but not the one under 93 in section 6. If I look at the POA on it, it's $20,000 to $40,000 and anywhere from 300 to 1,000 hours. So, and I don't know how much the other one is. So, just for clarification.
Sure. I have a feeling that we don't have very specific answers, but go ahead, Ms. Bay.
It is as set out in the project options analysis. The item in number 3 was intended to identically mimic the one that was set out in section 6, the project options analysis. So the fact that it doesn't is an error on my part, and I apologize. They are not two separate projects. They are indeed the same project, and the budget number is intended to reflect the cost of the infrastructure piece. The assumption there is that the master planning piece would be funded by UVic.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to, seeing no other hands, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? I know that'll make UVic happy to hear that is a council priority.
And I'll move that staff be directed to prepare a project options analysis for an affordable housing strategy for council's consideration as part of the mid-2026 review of council priorities.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Smart. I did note there was a, oh, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just hoping to make an amendment to the motion to delete as part of the mid-2026 review of council priorities and replace that with as soon as feasible, just to communicate to staff that we would rather not potentially have to wait that long to receive the options analysis if they could fit it in earlier.
Sure. I'm going to just turn to staff and ask if that is feasible, just given timelines and so forth. I guess you, Mr. Bull, put you on the spot.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to look into that because, yeah, project option analysis is high level, so we could combine a couple of scope elements that we have tentatively in mind for this. So I can try let me see, Ms. Hunt also has some suggestions here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I would suggest that that be a part of the report back from planning in January, and we can include that. And once Mr. Bowles had a chance to look at his entire work plan and where that might fit and if it could be advanced, so we'll report back on that.
So just for my clarification, the motion that is as is worded right now, it does say mid-2026 review of council priorities, but do I hear from you, Ms. Hunt, that can be included as part of the work plan for the year, and then council could give some direction at that point to reorder some of the priorities at that time?
Yes, Your Worship. I think if you just removed for council's consideration, and then when we discuss the timing of that in January,
Okay,
that would be best.
That makes sense. So the suggestion here is to strike all the words after consideration. Is the mover and seconder comfortable with that? Okay.
I'm fine with that.
Any other questions or comments? I have one, and that is just this and the aspect of tenant protection, which is also on the long list. I think having an options analysis for that, the two seem to go, they're not entirely conjoined, but they are somewhat conjoined. And before I make any suggestion about maybe adding both of those into an project options analysis, I do want to get a sense of what the scope of that might look like. So if I might just ask Mr. Bowl, because I know that, I've heard around the table from a number of people that, as we're considering, new multifamily, as we're considering these pieces, that there's a risk here that we're going to be putting people out without a tenant protection policy. And so just curious what the impact would be of adding both of those into a project option analysis to come back to council.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. It depends a bit where it goes. There's also some other direction from council to look at all affordable housing tools and explore inclusionary zoning, and that's all pointing to the affordable housing strategy POA that you could be asking for. There is also a separate long-listed rental housing strategy project, so a tenant protection bylaw could also be there, or it could be one-off and kind of actioned on its own, or as part of possibly the pre-zoning efforts next year, if that proceeds. Let me see, I probably should pull up the POA.
So in section 6 under 91, number 91, there's a developed tenant protection bylaw, and it's got a POA attached.
Yes.
So perhaps maybe if the wording was attached to basically say affordable housing strategy, which would be, so that's prepare a project option analysis for affordable housing. If we add tenant protection, we could include maybe that POA as well into that report, just so we have both as part, or would that automatically be part of your consideration in the report back, since it's already on that options analysis list? Sorry, I'm going into process and substantive question there, which is probably a bad combination. Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. The project options analysis for the tenant protection bylaw is already part of your package, so that is already prepared. If there's a desire to include consideration of the tenant protection bylaw as part of the affordable housing strategy, then I think it would in essence be delivery option 2 of that project options analysis, but slightly revised. So it would say, instead of consider tenant protection bylaw as part of CPP number 2, develop a strategy for maintaining rental housing stock, it would be consider tenant protection bylaw as part of the affordable housing strategy project that council is wanting a preparation of a project options analysis of. So what we could consider is council could ask that that project options analysis for the tenant protection bylaw, which is council priority project 91, be considered in conjunction with the affordable housing strategy.
Your Worship, I would suggest that it be considered in conjunction with the work plan for the Planning and Building Department when that's brought back in January. So I think bringing all these things together, and maybe not necessarily the project options analysis, but asking Mr. Bull to look at his entire work plan, and then council can make adjustments to that when that comes back in January. So I think the direction would be to consider the tenant protection bylaw within the work plan in 2026 and report back on that, and then he can report back on how that could be incorporated and what would have to be delayed or deferred, and or additional resources, or how we could incorporate that.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Hunt. I think that was sort of we have an options analysis already generated. I just sort of, hearing that this is coming back, I just wanted to make sure that we were considering that as part of the, we're facing some pretty awful decisions, right? There's a lot of things we should be doing, and we're not able to do them all. So, I think it's appropriate for this body to own that prioritization at the end of the day. So that's all I really wanted, was to make sure that tenant protection, project options analysis that's already prepared is included in that piece for that consideration. So I don't know if, Does that require any change of language? Will that happen essentially as part of this? Like, I'm just wondering, do we just add the word tenant protection for council's consideration as part of this? I don't want to make this overly complicated procedurally.
I think if you make a direction to include the tenant protection bylaw POA as part of the January report and consideration of the work plan, then we can report back on how that could be incorporated or not, and other things that could slide. So.
Okay, well, given that there's two different things here, my suggestion procedurally then would be, because I'm sorry, I've
Yes,
sidelined this a
separate.
little bit, is separate them. So we have a motion in front of us to prepare a project options analysis for that, for council's consideration. Let's deal with that, and if there's a desire to also include the tenant protection into that report, then we'll do that as a separate motion. Fair? Okay, so the main motion is in front of us right now is to prepare the POA for affordable housing strategy. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? And then can I just suggest, just for conversation, a motion to include the tenant protection POA as part of the January report to council?
Make that motion.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Any discussion on that? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, thank you. That concludes the recommendations here, so we're probably now on to a few other odds and ends of things that we may want to adjust or deal with. I'm cognizant of time, it's 9:15. I do want to make sure that we have time for the next agenda item as well. So with that, are there other areas of things that people would like to reorder, reframe, or shift in terms of the timelines? Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I don't know, I think this would count as a motion rising, but I did want to explore the opportunity to request from engineering staff a resourcing background or with respect to council priority projects 2055 to evaluate the Bowker Creek public walkway extension as per our earlier conversation.
Thank you. I'm just going to make sure I get the wording right as to what we're asking for. So, Mr. Rennick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was putting up my hand for that. Council has already received a backgrounder. What council is seeking is a council project sign-off.
We managed to confuse ourselves with all of our words. So the motion then is to seek a council project sign-off report related to the B Street connector.
Yep, that's correct, Your Worship, for council priority projects 26/55 with respect to the Bowker Creek public walkway extension.
Very good. Is there a seconder for that? Moved and seconded. Is there a discussion? We know what the project is, but I'm not 100% clear on what this motion does. So just over to you, Mr. Rennick. What will come of this and come back to council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What will come back to council is a document which we refer to as a council project sign-off, which is essentially how that project gets initiated. So that's going to have the details for council on the timing, the costs, the scope, the resource implications for council to then say, yes, proceed as per, or for council to make suggestions or modifications.
Right. Or not do it if we don't think it's appropriate. Okay. That seems very clear to me. Clear to everybody else? Any discussion on that ask? I'm not seeing any. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Councillor Upton, you had your one more?
No, thank you. Just a question for clarification. I'm going to be pedantic because there's been lots of discussions about, and I feel like the update from community building and planning contemplated for January is in and of itself becoming a very large task for community building and planning. So I want to acknowledge that. Thank you very much. But I did, with specific reference to our discussion around the village planning process and potential timelines associated thereof, I did hear that there would be a, I guess, quote, necessary or mandatory touch point about council priority projects in 6 months' time, as described by Ms. Bay. We would do that on the regular. But I just wanted to be clear that my understanding is that that January update from community building and planning would provide information about feasibility and potential timelines with respect to the village planning process, given all the other tasks being managed by Community Building and Planning. So I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm not sure to give that to Ms. Hunt or to, go ahead, Ms. Hunt.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Appleton, yes, that is the plan. The report that's going to come back in January is to sort of lay out a master project plan of all the various work items that could be completed this year and the timing of those, so that council has a sense of when, and we will include the village planning in that as well. So it wouldn't be starting that, it would just be giving council a sense of when that might be able to be started.
Good. Thank you very much for that. Good thing you don't take any time off over Christmas, Mr. Bull. Councillor Smart?
Thank you. I think this might be an appropriate motion to put to council that staff.
Call the question on the
Oh, sorry.
motion that's in front of
Apologies.
us right now,
Apologies.
sorry. Did I call the question on this? I did. Okay, my apologies, I did. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
I'd like to put forward a motion that staff add to the building and planning January update the potential, well, actually, this would be for, apologies, this would be for engineering. It's with regards to the car share. So the motion would be that staff bring back to council a council project sign-off for bylaw revisions for car share to reduce barriers for future car share opportunities.
Yeah, before I seek a seconder, I'm just going to make sure we all understand, including staff, what the... Yeah, can you perhaps refer to the piece that's on here?
And I would not be referring to the larger project on the long list, but actually in the first stage of the meeting today when we were looking at council resolutions. Just because it was a piece that actually used to be separated, that I believe we actually have a council project backgrounder for already, but because it was combined with a larger project, the whole thing got long listed, which was unfortunate since there was a very small task that it sounded like could have been moved forward. So, which is just the bylaw revision portion, not the larger project of encouraging car share.
So would it make sense to perhaps just ask that document to come back to council and just have us look at it again and see at that point? Because I think none of us, I'm not up to, I can't remember what that project backgrounder said, and so that might be helpful for us to have some context. So, Mr. Reddick, we may just amend this just to have that come back so we can at least see it before we give any specific direction, but go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The discussion that we're having at the table is that if the council member is only referring to the one small aspect, that we're not actually talking about the full council priority project. And so we wouldn't be seeking a motion to do a sign off because we're really talking about essentially that one outstanding resolution, and it might be that staff bring back an update on the status of that one particular resolution. Seeing nodding from my CAO.
Just, yeah, so just procedurally here, I want to make sure I get this clear and clean. Would you seek a motion then to ask staff to I'm just wondering if bringing back the original, report back to this table would give us that opportunity to give direction at that point, with the understanding that there may be a quick subset of that we might be able to advance, but we may want to look at the whole. I'm trying to think procedurally here as opposed to writing a new report and going out and trying to assess what council means by this, because I think none of us without seeing it really have a good sense of what could or couldn't be peeled off. Mr. Rennick?
Yes, thank you. Looking at the tracker, that resolution was from the 24th of April, 2023. And so I think both for staff and council to take another look at that agenda, those reports, those minutes, to understand that decision, I think that would be the appropriate course of action for this one.
So what would be the appropriate course of action to make a motion to that effect? Just to direct staff to bring back that matter to council for consideration? Is that okay? So bring back the earlier report on mode shares for council's further consideration. Is that a fair? Councillor Smart, is that sufficient for you?
Yes, that's sufficient for me. I was looking to just take this small operational project that got lost and just do the small amount of work we could and not, yeah, bring back the bigger project. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So not repeating any work, we'll just bring back that original report, and perhaps if there's some updates provided by engineering, that would be helpful.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps the motion text could be that staff be directed to provide us an update on Council Resolution 2023-163.
That's moved and seconded. And that will result in that report coming back to this table. Okay. Thank you. Other discussion? Seeing any? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Any other items arising from the thing? Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Section 6, number 92, the develop implementation plan for pedestrian and sidewalk master plan. I am particularly interested in advancing the option 3 of the POA that is provided. However, it is...
See option 3?
Yeah, option 3, but it is not listed as it is excluded from council priority projects. So I'm not certain how it gets into the work planning, and if it's not a council priority project, how we undertake to consider it.
Sure, I'm going to go to you, Mr. Rennick, or Ms. Bay. Ms. Bay made the mistake of putting her hand too close to the button. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. It would be by council resolution, just asking us to advance that project per option 3. It would not count towards the council priority project total.
And if I may further add, there is no additional budget ask associated with the option 3 delivery.
So then I will advance that as staff have indicated.
Okay, thank you. I might get some clarification because it says develop a technical report for comprehensive replacement enhancement program. So I'm just trying to get my head around how that doesn't have a budgetary impact. Mr. Rennick?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Council has established an ongoing capital program for capital sidewalk repairs at an annual amount of $500,000. What option 3 is proposing is taking $50,000 of next year's $500,000, and rather than using that $50,000 to build sidewalks, use that $50,000 to develop this technical report. And so that's when I made the comment that there's not a budget ask. It's not a new budget ask. It's just a reallocation of funds that council has already considered.
Okay, I'll go back to the mover before I take a seconder and make sure that's the understanding of the mover. Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Green, thank you. Okay, discussion on this? Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Worship. So I note that, I guess I'm just wondering how it slots into the overall work planning process, because it does say 100 staff hours in it. So I guess I would just ask staff to comment on impact on capacity and just overall departmental capacity that comes with that ask.
Sure. To you, Mr. Rennick?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you. There is an impact on the workload, of course. It would be reallocating some staff who are working on other projects, but ultimately we did not foresee this as being something that would have a significant resource impact on the department. Essentially, we already have this budget, and it's currently council is kind of looking to staff to provide advice on how to allocate it. Using some of that budget on a technical report, we don't feel that requires a significant change or a significantly greater workload. It's just directing resources in a different direction.
Thank you. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, and that's helpful. So what I'm seeing here is an ask to essentially do an analysis. Analysis that produces, and as I understand it, an output or essentially an assessment of our sidewalk infrastructure that we don't already possess. Essentially, we're doing a lot of sidewalk in response to to identified significant problems, and essentially not that we're not moving strategically through our sidewalk infrastructure, but that this provides us an additional specific technical analysis that staff have not had the capacity to produce, and it would be a useful planning tool.
Mr. Rennick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's how I would frame that as well. We can do technical analysis on the condition of existing sidewalks. It's very easy to see. You have so many kilometers of asphalt, so many kilometers of concrete, what the overall condition of them is, but there's not really a technical way to measure what isn't there. The way that you measure what isn't there is by engaging the community and saying where are the missing links that the community would like to prioritize.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you. And just further to that, thank you for those questions, Councillor Appleton. And just to add to that, especially if you were wanting to work forward on the village plan, then I think having an understanding of what enhancements, including transit shelters or benches or whatever, that we don't, it's fine to repair something if you see it, but if it's not in front of you, you don't necessarily think. So I think this just ties together nicely with all of the active transportation.
Okay, thank you. So that's the motion. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks. So yeah, that's kind of where I was going to. I think, I mean, as one of the speakers spoke to us about tonight, we need to, I think the residents need to know what we mean by active transportation. To me, this falls under active transportation. It's sidewalk repair, replacement, and enhancement. And I think that, sidewalks, accessibility, and pedestrian safety are where a lot of residents see the greatest daily benefit. And so I'm wondering why this isn't included in one of the main priorities about the active transportation network. Why would we not have this there, or could it fall under there?
Sure. I'm not sure it makes it
Through the mayor, it's just addressing the earlier comment that I made that there had been a desire of this council to create a separate line item specific to sidewalks. That's kind of the genesis of why this looks separate, and ultimately perhaps an outcome of that technical report is that the two programs become combined so that they are a stronger program, but I don't want to presuppose the outcome.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smart, you have your hand up?
I'll just, because it kind of got daylighted there, I just wanted to express my support for this. I'm excited to see this work underway.
All right, hearing broad support, maybe not universal, I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Anything else that people wish to have returned back? I had just one, and I might just ask that it get moved and have a quick discussion on it. There is on section 4, which is potentially for 2027 or later, was number 82, create a standards of maintenance bylaw for heritage designated properties. I'm going to suggest a motion that get added to potentially be started in 2026, which would essentially move it on to what the impact would be of in the report that comes back in January. I don't know what the total amount of work is. It says 25,000. We haven't got money aside for it. That's just one piece I put. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Speaking in support of that potential motion, I just wanted to ask, is it going to be a council priority project? Because it seemed almost operational to me, and I just wondered if that could be clarified.
Sure. It's a reasonable question. It is such a small amount of money and things, but it's one of those ones that has been sitting in the long list for a while. So it's on our list. So yeah, I think this is one of those ones where we consider whether or not we want to set a priority for it, because it's sort of one of those ones that everybody thinks we should have, but maybe has a hard time making it to the to-do list. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Yeah, thank you. And wanting to advance it today and speaking in favor of it, I just wanted to know if the result of that motion might just be to operationalize it. And I just wondered if we could have that clarity before we vote on it.
I think, yes, go ahead, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I would like to point out that project, because it anticipates consultation with property owners, it's not really operational on that perspective. It would be a significant effort, even though it's not maybe as big as the OCP for sure, but it's still a council priority project level effort. So I just want to make that clear that council can ask for that, but it does make the puzzle a bit harder for January. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't want to get into the merits of it or not too much this point. Just really the question is like, do we want to include in a list of potential things that they work on in 2026 versus we're currently sitting in 2027 or beyond? That's essentially the only real ask here is if, to consider this amongst all the other projects. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson and then Green.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and I agree that it has been on the long list for a while, and it is important. However, I did note that in the status, it said it may be possible to explore asking the Heritage Commission to volunteer to take on aspects of this work, which then would reduce some of the impacts on staff, and I'm wondering if staff could comment about that.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, we are getting some new members shortly on the commission. Don't know exactly all the backgrounds yet and their availability or interest, so that would be something that we need to follow up on with the commission and see how that might work. And maybe in that context, maybe another look could be taken at the scope of the project and the approach and see if there's options there. Thank you.
Go to Councillor Green. I just point, there's been no motion on the floor yet, so I don't want to spend lots of time if there isn't someone willing to move it forward. Pieces, so we have Councillor Green and then I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a general comment on process, and that is, while this is helpful, what I'm noticing is that so many of these topics are actually integrated, could be integrated. And I think the integration is important because it also then suggests or encourages collaboration at the departmental level. So it's just a comment generally. I would love to see this not so individualized and fragmented, but much more integrated, where the topics are, active transportation, touches on cycling, pedestrian, and so on. So it's just, it's late in the term to be asking for this, but going forward, I hope that we can maybe look at maybe a different way of organizing the material so that they're not so fragmented or individualized and sort of hang together differently.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I do know, a lot of these get driven by issues that arise, and we make motions, so it's hard to kind of do that work up front, but I appreciate the comment. Councillor Watson?
Thank you. I guess I just wanted to comment about this. This actual request hasn't really been around for that long. It was one of 5 or 6 items that came out of Steve Barber's work with the Heritage Commission, and it's really maybe it's a year at the most. So I'm not sure. I do agree that it needs to be done, but I'm not sure that I would pull it out of a list of other things and give it preference at this point in time. And I also just think it would be it may be possible to ask commission members to volunteer to take on, but that still takes a lot of staff direction and hand-holding and preparation of materials and all sorts of things. So I think seeing a commission work in some off the side of their own desk volunteer role to do bylaw development is pretty unlikely. So I wouldn't be holding out much hope for that myself as a sitting here thinking about that. So I'm not really in favor of selecting this and giving it preference over some of the other things that are on this list. And also because it falls in the same department as 7 or 8 other things.
100%. I fully agree that directing this to be done is totally the wrong thing, I think. The intention here was just to bring it into that list and then we consider it in there. It is unlikely to make the top of the list. I get that. Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Your Worship. So my question was actually for you as the proposer of the motion and just bringing forward the motion. I was unclear as to whether or not, like, what the intent was here. So I would be in support of potentially considering this as part of the overall workload assessment report coming back from community building and planning. I think that that's reasonable. I don't think I'd be in support of sort of just moving it into 2026 and sort of putting that in that. Well, essentially, we're directing that it be done in 2026. Community building planning already very taxed, so I'm just kind of wanting clarification as to what you were hoping to do with that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Appleton. It was the former, really, just to have it included as part of that consideration. I heard a comment made that I think may be helpful, and maybe it could be operationalized. Was the point that it ends up here because it they anticipate public consultation and pieces attached to it. This just seems to be one of those ones that may not need that piece of it. It is a pretty standard, it's in place in many jurisdictions. It really basically lays out the obligations of people who own a heritage designated house and their obligations for maintenance on that, and it's to prevent the sort of willful neglect. So I don't see this as being a community consultation piece. I see it as essentially a point in time kind of piece. And so I guess maybe that's the context to bring it back into the January report, is to say, if people are in agreement with that, then maybe we could ask if that can be either operationalized or that might change the scope of the ask a little bit. So that would, to answer your question, Councillor Upland, that's what I'm thinking. Or no? Sure.
So then, Your Worship, just to have something to talk to, then I would make a motion to the effect of that the standards of maintenance bylaw for the development and implementation assessment for a standards of maintenance bylaw for heritage designated properties be included in the January report from the Community Building and Planning Department.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Just looking around the table, are people generally in agreement this should be something that essentially replicates what's out there and does not have to do a lot of consultation? Okay, so if that helps in that report coming back, that's the expectation, not a project, a piece of paper. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Very briefly, it's a preservation tool. I think it's important, conservation and preservation. I think it will help preserve some of these homes that could be vulnerable otherwise. Thanks.
Find out if this passes in January about where it might fit into here, and it may still be in 2027 or later, but let's at least consider it as part of that mix. So, and I think the most valuable part of this was that clarification of what the expectations are of that bylaw. It's not, I think, maybe as big as we were originally intending it. So perfect. I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you for accepting my rambling bit there. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks. And then from that same section, I know Councillor Green brought this up about the Willows Shared Knowledge Planning Project, and I do read in the status, it does say that principal guiding of how to proceed with this work may be identified within the Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan, so there may be merit in awaiting completion of that plan. And I'm okay with that, but I'm wondering if at the same time we might need to do a project's option analysis on it, or would that be not a good step to take if we're going to wait for it to come out with the Parks, Rec and Culture Master Plan?
So the air, since you're still here and awake, if you don't mind answering the question, currently it's not sitting as an active project, and so it probably is to be considered as part of that. Is that, maybe you can just talk to that?
Sure, through the mayor. So yes, that was staff's consideration, was that going through the Parks Master Planning process would really help us understand some of the principles to approaching that redevelopment project. It's probably one of the most complex projects that we would be undertaking in terms of park redevelopment projects. So having that opportunity to speak with the community about ensuring that we have the principles of key objectives and goals for the park system going forward to offer that guidance in developing that.
I might just have a follow-up, Mayor. I think that's great, but I think it's really important, based on what the community has been expecting around this project, because it has been around for a little while, that we're very clear and maybe do some communication around that this is when it will be looked at, just because I think otherwise we might get some pushback from some residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the discussion around this item. I guess what I need clarification on is, what comes first, the parks planning or the information from the First Nations to guide the parks planning? Because going to them for comment afterwards may mean changing something. So I'd like us to think a little bit about how we sequence through this in a way that is respectful and ensures that we don't go down the path only to have to backtrack.
Sure. And I'll just take a moment in case anybody's still watching us. For some of the context here is just as a recall. This came about really as a recognizing that there is a opportunity to refresh the Willows. It doesn't have a lot of facilities down there for the level of activity during the summer. It doesn't connect very well to the, maybe to Estevan Village and things, but really that sort of that service level down there. And so the idea at the start of that Sitchinall piece was before we even start talking about a redevelopment or what we're going to do, knowing how many as an archaeological area and as a cultural area of the village site, that we would respectfully start that process with the First Nations and kind of walk through a process. And really, we got a grant from the provincial government to undertake that work as a piece. We got a letter of support from First Nations to do that work. Unfortunately, other priorities have crept up, and the First Nations have not been able to prioritize it. And we've really shifted that to the work at Turkey Head. So I think it is, thank you for flagging that, because I think it is really important because of the cultural nature of it. I don't think it precludes it being sort of flagged in that way within a Parks Master Plan, but I think ultimately that Parks Master Plan, just so you have some context of where that came from, was to kind of do that work, to try a really innovative way of inverting the planning process from going from here's our plan, what do you think, to what's your interest here, and can we develop a process around your interests? And so I think that context is probably all that's needed, just so that as you're guiding that, Mr. Soulier, you sort of understand some of that context that happened in the past years. Okay. I don't see any other, Councillor Smart, sorry, my apologies.
That's okay. There was just one other note I had from our conversation around the table, and I wanted to put forward to council for consideration. So the motion would be that the community building in planning include in their January report, Council Priority Project 90, develop a deconstruction building relocation bylaw, option 1 with minimal enforcement approach. And if there's a second, I'd be happy to motivate.
Moved and seconded.
This is in the number 6 potential new projects project analysis, and it's project 90.
Okay, we have a seconder, so please go ahead.
Thank you. I attended the CRD Climate Summit today and actually had a chance to talk with some of the staff about the model bylaw and some of the specifics of this backgrounder. And it sounded, when I first looked at this backgrounder, of course this is something I would really like to see go forward, but I was concerned about the potential staffing impacts, and I think, what I gathered in chatting a little bit is like that would be a little bit within our control, how much we wanted to enforce the project, and so potentially we could really mitigate that staffing load risk, which would be a real concern for me, and I'm sure others around the table. But what this is an opportunity to do is, and this is something I'm really keen to see the CRD support all the different municipalities by creating these model bylaws. I think this is a great approach where we utilize our Capital Regional District to do the majority of the work and then be able to take a model bylaw and really roll it out with hopefully a minimal amount of cost and work on our end. So
just for my clarification, if I was scrambling to go dig up my project options analysis. So this is option 1 that would
this is option 1, but specifically adding that it would be a minimal enforcement approach, just to give staff some direction around not wanting to have a high level of enforcement that might trigger some extra staffing.
Okay, no, thank you for that clarification. Just wanted to make sure we were all looking at the same POA. So the motion is made and seconded, so this would not direct it, but it would be included as one of the possible work options in that report. Other discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yeah, I just would, it's really interesting that Councillor Smart's brought this up, because on Tuesday at the SIP Local Leadership Day, this was the one work area project that I sit down and discussed. I think it really is that the idea of a model bylaw as opposed to a customized one, it makes perfect sense. The CRD through Heartland is the one that's really feeling the pressure and the pinch, so the incentives are in the right place. And the development industry desperately needs standardization across the region if we're going to make any progress on this. So I think it is the right direction to go in, and I'm happy to support this being rolled into the January report with sympathy to all
It's going
those
to be a
concerned.
500-page report by the time this is all said and done. But I think it actually just, I'll call the question on this one, I think, and there's no other speakers. All those in favor? Any opposed? I do recognize that we've added a lot into that report in January. I will say that, thank you in advance for the work to be done by the department to do that. But two, I think this really does speak to the sheer volume of work that is coming into that department. And I think until we have that report that kind of lays out, here's all the things that we could be working on, and we really can't do them all. So, really ultimately, that is a governance level thing to say, yeah, these are our priorities and let's do those. I think that's a really valuable approach and better done there than trying to, in the context of here and sort of the general consensus. So I just want to express my appreciation to the staff for coming up with this, because it's, I think, the right thing to do for us to kind of contemplate this more rationally as a, community building and planning impacts, as opposed to sort of the broader overall thing. So thank you for giving us this. I know we've added a lot of little, could we include this, but I really do think that at the end of the day, this will be beneficial to the community, and makes it actually, we will have to say no to some things, but at least we're doing it in the context of the overall. So I appreciate that approach. Okay, anything else before? I think that's the last of the motions on this piece. Okay, thank you. That was a very thorough discussion, and we have one more item on the agenda. I don't think this will take as long, I'm going to say. You think it's going to take 2.5 hours? Thank you, Mr. Rennick. Ms. Bay?
Your worship?
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I just, preliminary, I'll make a motion to extend the meeting until 10:20.
10:20. Thank you, everybody. All the senior leadership that sat through this. You do not have to sit through the rest of this except for Ms. Bay. So the motion is to extend to 10:20. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Ms. Bay, to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight's report seeks your direction on whether staff should request 2026 funding to operationalize deer management. From 2017 to 2025, we partnered with UWSS in the province on a research project testing immunocontraception, basically contraception for deers. The results are clear. Immunizing does reduces fawn births and slows population growth. With the research phase complete, the province is now allowing us to apply for a permit to use this method outside a research context. So this is kind of a watershed moment for the district, and definitely a new opportunity. Deer management is just not just an issue for Oak Bay, it's also an issue for our municipal neighbors. It's a regional issue. And because it's an issue also for others, there might actually be interest on the part of those others to join in service delivery, which might have positive impacts, not just for effectiveness, but also possibly for reducing costs. However, there's no guarantee. We haven't had these discussions with them yet. We don't know whether they're ready to move on, whether they're interested in moving on. So what we're recommending is that we explore those partnerships until July 1st of next year. And then we're already now seeking your direction to proceed independently of those others if those partnerships should not materialize. Either way, if the service is to be provided, funding will be needed. We don't have the money in our budgets right now. The province has told us that they don't have money for us to help with this, even though deer are a provincial responsibility. It's unlikely we'll be able to get grants for something like this, an operational type of project. So we are recommending that if this is something that you wish to see go ahead, that you allocate $85,000 in the 2026 provisional budget, or at least direct us to include it there so that you can consider it in the context of all the other asks that you'll be considering at that time. Either it would be used for a partnership model or a district-led delivery, depending on the results of those discussions that we have with partners, and we're seeking your direction to authorize the mayor and staff to enter into those discussions. How do we land on that 85,000? We haven't sought a request for quotes. We don't know that that's the exact cost. We've taken a look at both what the non-research portion of the budget was for UWSS. We took a look at what Esquimalt has been paying, and we came up with that budget based on that. But it is possible that that budget will be too much or too little. We don't really know until we've gone out for a request for quotes and sought that pricing. Obviously, it's not something we have staff trained to and skilled to deliver. It's fairly specialized service. So if funding is approved, staff will explore those regional partnerships until the middle of next year, and then proceed independently if necessary, if the money is there. That approach balances that opportunity for strategic collaboration, it's getting late, with operational readiness, and response to, there is strong community interest in deer population control. The question was asked earlier tonight, what kind of feedback are we getting through the annual questionnaires on this topic? Although we didn't ask the question directly this last time around, there were a number of just open-ended question comments on deer, and I know that I continue to get correspondence from time to time, as I'm sure Council does as well. So, Your Worship, that's a quick summary of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so thank you for turning around the post-meeting with the province and doing some research and bringing something to us. And the reason I would sort of suggest this won't take as long as the last one, that was all the priorities for all of council for the entire coming year, so hopefully it won't take as long. But also, I think this is, to my mind, a bit of a philosophical choice by council. Are we interested? Do we see the demand of the community being for deer management sufficient to consider budget? I appreciate this would be forwarding a budget request to consider it, and B, given that this year in particular we're very unlikely to get a grant, are we comfortable with advancing it this year? So I think it's essentially a philosophical question as opposed to a technical, detailed question as to whether how we do it, anything else. So that's really the primary question that I would put to this table is, do we want to, now that we're allowed to continue it, do we want to? And if so, I guess that's probably the main question. We'd have to allocate some money in the budget to even consider that at this point. I'll go around. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Green. Braithwaite and then Patterson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Bay. I'm just going to take a different tact. I don't think it's just a philosophical issue. I believe it's also a public health and safety issue. So I think that's important to recognize. But I just have a couple of questions for Ms. Bay, if that's okay.
Yes.
Through you to Ms. Bay. Ms. Bay, have we followed up with the UWSS since they discontinued their involvement about when we should, if we're going to pursue this course of IC, when that should be started again? I understand, having paused it, the deer are beginning to rebound. So that's my question. Thank you.
Ms. Bay?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There are deer out there that haven't been immunized, so I think it's really a governance decision in terms of how many of those deer do you want immunized, and it's really a question for the district.
Thank you.
Sorry, just supplemental. Have we followed up with UWS? Have we had any conversations with them since the discontinuation of the program?
Your Worship, it's not so much that it's a discontinuation as it is the conclusion of the research project. So the research project is now finished. They have fulfilled their obligations under the terms of their commitments to us when they completed that report. And so, no, we haven't had any further discussions with UWSS because there's been really no basis upon which to have those further discussions until we have direction from Council as to how to proceed.
I can say I've had a bit of a discussion, just to remind everybody, the immunocontraception is applied in the fall, and so we're sort of beyond this year's ability, so this would be approval of budget in May, going through some sort of selection process. This would be application in the fall, so just of 2026, that's the piece. And they did say that there would be some, because there's still a lingering effect of the earlier things, there is a benefit to timing of doing it sooner, but it's not massive one way or the other. Okay, that's not the words they used, that's my words. I have speaking order, Councillor Braithwaite, Patterson, and Appleton.
Thanks, Mayor. I have a few questions in regards to this, and through you. My first question would be, has the province provided any rationale for declining operational funding despite holding the legal authority over wildlife?
I think just lack of the same funding constraints that that we're facing, they're also facing. They certainly cited the need to apply the funding that was previously applied to support us in the research project to deal with some of the disease outbreaks in other parts of the province, and that's why they have no further money available.
Yeah, I guess that just, to me, that's it. I'm just wondering if it's appropriate for municipal taxpayers to fund a program that the province actually controls and owns. So that's a question that we can ask at some point, I'm sure. And I'm just wondering what staff capacity will be redirected from the current priorities to manage contracting, reporting, and public inquiries in regards to this, or would we have to do that?
Thank you, Your Worship. It would be a new service. It's not a service that we are currently providing. So part of that $85,000 is intended to cover the staff time anticipated to be associated with overseeing that, because we anticipate that if we're not paying for it, we will have to pay someone else to do it, and if there is a regional service delivery model, we will have to contribute to those other parties providing their staff to do it. Having said that, it's not like we're saying, here we need a full-time position to manage this, because it's obviously not a full-time amount of hours that's involved, but it does point to, it is a difficult thing to incrementally increase services for something like this when you're dealing with something less than a full-time equivalent job, and finding somewhere to put it in the organization in an organization that's already tapped. So I think the answer to that question is I'm really hoping that there is interest elsewhere, and that the amount of money that we have set aside to support the administration of the project will be supporting someone else to do that. And if it ends up being something that we end up having to do, that's a bridge we'll have to cross at that time in discussions with our CAO in terms of where that lands. It's one of those things that operationalization of deer management doesn't neatly fall into any particular department.
Thank you.
And thank you, and through you, Mayor, I guess that we can't guarantee regional participation either, so then it kind of begs the question, is it fiscally responsible for us to create a new service area with no assurance of its effectiveness, number one, and any other parts of the region coming forward to help. My last question for you would be, do we have a grasp on the expected long-term cost of an IC program? You might have touched on this already. If Oak Bay must operate alone year after year.
Bay?
Your Worship, I'm not really able to provide a definitive answer to that. I think we would be in a much better position to answer that question after having gone out for a request for quotes. Actually, it would be an RFP for the amount that we're talking about, but it depends on a number of things. It depends on, for example, which vaccine we end up using. Esquimalt is testing one, we're testing another. The one they're using, as I understand it, it may be a little bit longer lasting than one we're using, in which case it would have to be applied less frequently. I don't know what the permitting, what would be permitted by the province. We would have to go through a process of applying for a permit and seeing what the province allows us to do. They have told us that they won't likely set a limit on the number of deer that we can immunize. I think I've stated in the report that we would go with the assumption, unless council directs otherwise, with the intent that we would immunize as many as possible, that as the budget allows. Obviously not applying multiple vaccines to the same doe. there will be an upper limit there at some point in terms of the number of deer that are out there. Yeah, so it'll depend on the vaccine, the frequency that we are permitted to apply them for, and probably the service delivery model, whether we're doing it alone or in conjunction with others.
I'll share, thank you. I'll share this before I go to Councillor Patterson in Appleton. There was contemplation that because there's immunocontraception and then it doesn't need to be boosted for a number of years, that we may consider, as this goes forward, a likelihood of sort of putting money in on a regular basis, and then every third year you'd actually do a project and that would fund it, so you kind of spread those costs. That was one of the things that the member of, at least a former member of UWSS cited. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Sorry, I did forget one question that I had, and that was around costing, actually. So I think since 2017,
Can we just mute Mr. Rennick's connection here? Can we just mute Mr. Yeah. Thank you.
And it was, I think since 2017, we've spent probably about $330,000 in when I do the math and from what I remember, and some of that came from the province. I think Oak Bay's is probably somewhere around 180 to 210,000 that we've put into it since that time. And I'm just wondering if does that sound correct to you, or you might have a better idea on that? You probably have it right in front of you, and that answer can come after somebody else asks a question. Thanks.
We'll give her a chance to look things up, and I'll go to Councillor Patterson, then Appleton.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And, you know, it is the Parks Department that are feeding them. So I think it falls under Parks. But that is...
Public Works is picking them up, so.
Yeah, well, yeah, but, you know, anyways. No, I just... everything we have discussed here, and yes, it's you know, it's painful that we're spending so much money on a problem that really is provincial, but nevertheless, it does affect us. However, it's not just the immunization to this program, because the program we had, in fact, did have an educational component to it, and of course many of the animals right now have the collars and whatnot, the identification on them, which will then all I suppose have to be rolled into it. So it's a bit broader than just the immunocontraception, the program that would come back, and so I just am wondering if that would be identified and added to services that we may be seeking from a consultant.
Ms. Bay?
Thank you, Worship. It might be potentially different consultants, and in terms of the one that we have budgeted for, that I have proposed a budget for, would be essentially the veterinary services that would apply the immunocontraception. If council is wishing to expand that service further to include education, that would require additional funding, and it would likely be a separate service contract. In response to the earlier question, if I may, I can confirm that to date there's been a total of $475,000 spent, 210 by the district, and the remainder by the province. So a significant over-investment between 2017 and today. That included not just the immunocontraception, of course, but also the education pieces and the research pieces. So there's a lot of camera equipment analysis and so forth that went into that budget. And now we're talking about a lesser budget amount going forward. If you're just looking at the application of the immunocontraception, as I said earlier, if there's education, we would need to boost that budget further.
And just for clarification, the tagging, collars, they're mandatory from the province. They all say do not eat if you look closely at the tags. And so they're just part of the process. When you apply this, they have to be tagged in that way. So it formed the same process as was done, but I think some of those details are still to be worked out from the province. I don't think they've quite developed their operational requirements yet. Please continue.
Yes, thank you. You know, and there are places that would think we were quite insane to be spending this kind of money to control a population, where in other places they hunt them and they're a food source. But nevertheless, here we are. I just would also like to take a minute to extend my gratitude to the work done by UWSS to get us through this research project, because it was very detailed and it required a lot of expertise that of course we do not have on staff, and so I really appreciate the assistance we've had from UWSS and their many volunteers that work with our community. So I just wanted to add that on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have any questions at this time. I just have more commentary about sort of the approach taken here, but so I might defer it to other folks who have questions, or depending on what you want to do for approach here.
Well, there's no motion on the floor yet, so if you're willing to make a motion, we can talk to it through the process of a motion, or if I would allow some leeway if you want to make some general comments as well.
Okay, well, I can start there, Your Worship. So what I would do is actually make just the middle of these three recommendations. There are three staff recommendations included, so I would recommend that Council authorize the Mayor and CAO or designate to engage in discussions with other municipalities and the Capital Regional District to ascertain interest in joint service delivery. That singular component, Your Worship.
Thank you. Go ahead. Speak.
Okay, so given that framework, now I can kind of motivate to speak to that point. This is to me, this is a stepwise process of evaluating what to do next. I mean, I see this as very much a transitional point, because I think that there is value in supporting community-based research on deer population control, which is something that our communities clearly told us they want us to do. We're now moving into service delivery. We're talking about implementing a novel service. And if we allocate funds to it at this stage of the game, it's going to be understood in the community that if we implement the service, that funds will continue and will be there. My problem with that is that we haven't had a conversation. At no point in this conversation about population control have we ever talked. When we're talking about a service, then we need to talk about levels of service. What is the desired outcome? What exactly are we looking to achieve? What kind of population level is acceptable? We've never had this conversation with the community to say, yes, we want less deer, we want less negative interactions, but now we're talking about essentially it's a dollars and cents thing. Well, you can spend more money to achieve a certain outcome or a different outcome. So before we've had that conversation with the community about what the desired level of service is for this novel service that we're looking to provide, I can't support the allocation of a budget request. But I would like us to have a conversation with our neighbors. Obviously, there's economies of scale here. I'd like for us to talk first with our neighbors about whether or not there's a shared costs possibility going forward. If that's the case, then we can have a conversation with the community about a desired level of service. And then we can allocate funds based on that. That's my rationale. So I'm okay with talking to other folks to see whether there's an opportunity to share costs. But I can't support any of the other components there, because we haven't had a conversation with the community to say, this is what we think is acceptable. There clearly is a significant, we've heard from the community through the questionnaire and the community feedback that yes, they're concerned about the deer management issue, but there's varying opinions as to how strongly we intervene, and when you start spending a lot of tax dollars on it on an ongoing basis, then people are going to have opinions on that. So I would like to see us talk to our neighbors first and find out what we've got available to us as far as partners for cost sharing, and then go from there. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Green, and then I'll speak to the motion as well. Go ahead.
And I appreciate Councillor Appleton's approach, but I'm going to tell you what this topic does when you take it into the community. And Kevin, you and I experienced it firsthand. Sorry, Mayor. We experienced this firsthand in our first term in 2011. This is an incredibly divisive topic. It can divide communities, not unite them. And I think it's really important. It doesn't mean that we've made any commitment to move forward. I agree with you that middle clause is extremely important, but I also think it's important to demonstrate a commitment to the broader program. And this program was recognized internationally at the time, so it has a lot of credibility. I think it would be very important to message carefully around our intention, but I don't think the community is in a position to say or tell us what's an acceptable level of service. I don't think anyone really knows that. And I also think, as I say, it's a very divisive topic, certainly in my experience. So I would prefer to make a commitment, move forward through the mayor and our CAO to engage in discussions without any, without any obligation. But at least we have the framework should we need it. And I still believe this is a CRD issue, and that without other partners, deer will continue to inhabit urban centers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I think procedurally here, I'm happy to deal with this motion, which can be dealt with separately, and then if you wish to move the first portion of applying for the provision of adding it to the provisional budget, we can deal with that as a separate piece. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that Councillor Appleton is trying to avoid putting something into the budget right now and trying to go out to our other regional partners. But I just want to say that, when I look at this, and this is not going to come to any surprise to anybody sitting around the table, in I can always have trouble with that. IC will not reduce deer population quickly, only fawn births. My view has always been that the deer belongs to the province, therefore the province should handle and fully fund mitigation. The province controls all the wildlife management decisions, and the report reiterates that Oak Bay has to seek provincial permission for any deer management activity. So even though they're handing it off to us, they still want us to go back to them. They hold the authority. The province should also hold responsibility and cost, and they explicitly refuse to fund ongoing IC. That was something that they said. That report states that they will not pay for operational IC even though deer are a provincial species. And to me, this creates an unfunded mandate from the province. I just want to reiterate, it's a long-standing principle for me on the deer issue. These animals, as I said, belong to the province, and wildlife management sits squarely within provincial jurisdiction. Oak Bay cannot immunize a single deer without provincial permission, and yet the province has made it really clear to us that they will not fund the very activity that they control. That, in my view, again, is an unfunded mandate. And over the past decade, our community has already invested significantly, we've heard $210,000, into research, monitoring, public engagement, and mitigation. We've done our part and more, in my opinion. The research project was thorough, professional, and provincially supported. And now that the science is in, the next step should rest with the province and not be downloaded onto our taxpayers. Operationalizing a permanent deer management service at $85,000 a year with uncertain future costs and unclear permitting requirements is not something that I can support at this time, particularly when effectiveness depends on our regional coordination, and we can't guarantee that yet. So for me, the path forward is simple. The province must lead and fully fund any ongoing deer mitigation program, and this would mirror how other provincial wildlife issues are handled. Funding should follow jurisdiction. I'm going to say that again. Funding should follow jurisdiction. Until that happens, I'm not prepared to support creating any new municipal service to manage a provincial responsibility. So thank you. But I do appreciate the work that WSS has done.
Thank you, Councillor Braithwaite. I'm going to speak very briefly to this. I think the other question I do want to tackle is just the budget piece. Supportive of this middle piece. I'm just going to make a case. I'm hoping it goes on someone, I think Councillor Green would make the motion about including a budget request of $85,000. And I'll say that just in accordance with this, I've already spoken to my counterparts in the Esquimalt, Saanich, and Victoria. They're all quite interested. Part of the letter I would like to write to them is to say, We have included in our provisional budget $85,000. Would you please consider, adding this to your provisional budget? And so I think it's a harder question to ask if we don't do it. We are not committing ourselves. So I'm going to make that case when that motion comes forward. But it's certainly super critical for us to do the middle part. So totally supportive of this motion as it sits there. And I do, I'm very sympathetic to the stance of Councillor Braithwaite. I think it's true. I also, I will point out, they haven't refused to fund this. They have a Provincial Urban Deer Advisory Council, which is designed to allocate funding as needed. What they said this year is because of the outbreak of disease, they're really expecting all of that discretionary money to go really towards that disease outbreak. So they have not walked away from supporting funding, and this is part of the funding piece. But they've certainly said this year they won't, and they may never again in the future. That is uncertain funding and has been for a very long time. So anyway, to the motion that's on the floor, I'm happy to call the question. It sounds like there's general support for that. So I'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unopposed? Oh, sorry, Councillor Braithwaite is opposed. My apologies. See, this is what happens when we get past 10 o'clock. Councillor Green, did you wish to move the first? It's just the budget, bring forward a budget request of $85,000 for consideration of approval in the context of the budget.
Yeah, let's bring forward a budget.
Moved and seconded. Thank you.
Oh, it's already done.
Yeah, can we move to extend to 10:30 just so we can finish this conversation?
I'll move to extend to 10:30.
Moved, seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed, unopposed? Councillor Green?
I'll be very quick. I think, and I appreciate how Councillor Braithwaite feels about this issue, but what I am concerned about is that disease spread does not recognize boundaries or recognize jurisdictions. So I think, again, this is a public health and safety issue ultimately, and I think it behooves us to protect our citizens at this point. Thank you.
Yes, I think setting aside a budget for this is just realistic. And even if at the end of the day we had to act on our own, I think that's still something that we seriously need to consider. I hear what Councillor Appleton's saying about service levels, but I think that we have some good science about what happens if you immunocompromise a certain immunocontraceptive. If you apply IC to a certain number of deer, we know what the outcome is. And I also think just in terms of economies of scale, I wouldn't get too excited about that necessarily. That there may not be economies of scale in moving this to a larger program. And we also know from the science, the very good science that was done, that these deer in Esquimalt and Victoria are not necessarily going to wander into Oak Bay. If we control our own population, they stay in very limited clusters. We know kind of their geographic range, and we may be able to create a much healthier and safer community on our own, even if we don't have other participants. And I think that the public in Oak Bay has bought into this because it's humane, it's not killing deer, it's just it's managing the population. And I think it would be short-sighted to not continue when we have an opportunity here right now. So I strongly support going forward and putting money aside for us to be able to act in this fashion for the safety and benefit of our community.
Councillor Appleton?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, so not in support of allocating this base budget amount. I take a very similar view to Councillor Braithwaite. I think that we had excellent scientific work done. I think we did a lot of extensive support for a scientific program to establish an alternative way of doing deer management in an urban community in the city. Essentially, we've demonstrated success and demonstrated that there are positive outcomes out of that. And I too was hopeful that through that process, demonstrating that it was a viable ongoing option would encourage external funding to fund wildlife that are, again, not under our jurisdiction, to help, to be an economical and reasonable way to manage urban wildlife once that had been proven to be successful. So that was certainly my outcome. I don't support in any way, shape, or form instituting a novel service delivery for the community without having a directed conversation with the community about what that looks like, what the expected delivery is, what the outcome should be. Right now it's highly speculative about what kind of results we're going to get, and what people can expect. If we say we're going to charge you this much per year for per unit for your garbage pickup, which we just discussed the other day, then people know that they're going to get this type of garbage pickup every two weeks. They're going to get this type of level of service, is what they expect. Say I'm going to give you this much amount of money for deer management. How many deer does that mean? What can I expect on the ground? We can only speculate. So I'm just not in favor of instituting. I believe in the science. I believe there's been super positive things that have come out of the research, but we're at an inflection point here where we need to decide about implementing this novel service, and we haven't decided as a community what that's supposed to look like.
Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Smart, and then Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. I will speak in favor of the motion from the point of view of using this to leverage conversations with other potential collaborators. I do really feel excited that we're at this point where we're actually able to potentially utilize this tool to deal with the safety concerns in our community that have come up. I too really appreciate the fact that we've been a leader in this through our through the volunteers in our community and those supporting this. I do, however, in putting aside, this budget request that we will consider at a later date, really hope for more information in which to make that decision. I'd like to know potentially, as best as we could, the cost if we do it on our own versus the cost regionally, and I guess even details as far as how will we monitor the success of this? How many years will we plan to do it and be able to spread out the funds to lessen the cost to the community? And at what point will we check in and say, and actually have a point in which we're like, we will fund this for 3 or 5 years, and then we will check in again and decide if we're continue to do it, so that we give the community those expectations that this isn't a forever cost of this much money every year. So I have optimism, but also concerns, and I look forward to more information and more conversations. But in general, I'm excited to be at this point where we have the capability to have this conversation right now.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I do support putting in the budget funding. I think it's wise to have this. We've obviously missed this fall, so we've lost this season. But I think it's wise to put something in the budget. If the decision is made that we're not going to go forward with it, then the money does not get allocated. But I think it is very helpful in the context of working with partners to say what it is our intent to do. And while I understand what Councillor Appleton is saying on most of the services we offer, we do talk about service levels. But this whole program really required an expertise that our staff don't have, and most of our residents in the community do not have the ability. And it comes down to meeting expectations. And so I think if you went to them and they'd say, well, I want, no fawns in the next year, is that reasonable or not? And so I think we still do need to allow staff to go forward, have a budget for this, work with the consultants who will be able to provide some of those technical answers that we need, so that we might have a better understanding of what are the expectations, how will it be monitored, and how will we report back to the community annually on what is happening. So this will allow us to do all of that in a reasonable way, so I support it.
Thank you. I'll speak very briefly in favor. I motivated initially just on the rationale of being able to write a letter that has more power behind it. I will also just motivate, I think that it has value in and of itself. This may want to look at this as more as one-time funding, if that's the appropriate thing as we work out. And I think, if we actually undertake this, go out to RFP, go through that process, we'll have a much better understanding of what that looks like, what the money buys us, et cetera. So I think there's merit in doing this. Maybe I'm a little different. For some reason, deer calls come to my desk. And they are continuing to be negative in terms of the interactions, and not hateful of the deer, but there was a deer, came jumping out of a bush and jumped right through the side window of an SUV with 2 young children inside of it. Another one that, had someone witnessing a fawn being hit and having to be, put to death on the side of the road in front of their kids. And like, this is negative stuff happening in our community. There's a health aspect to it. There are aspects of this that I think I'm hearing from the community that it's still an issue, not to get rid of them, but to manage them. And so I think, approving the budget gives us the opportunity to start that process. Look, if we're the only ones in the whole region and all we're doing is attracting does into the empty space in Oak Bay, it may not be a long-term viable piece, but I think, we can demonstrate it. Many of the other partners are probably likely to say, well, what will it cost and what will the results be? And we have no way of answering that question until we probably do a year or two of this to demonstrate it. So I am supportive of this for the original reason, but also I think it has merit and we can work out the service levels, I think, over time is my way of looking at that. I don't know any other way of setting service levels than trying it and seeing. If you're looking also just at the number of dead deer that are picked up by Public Works every year, we're pretty close to about $1,000 a deer at this point with that thing. It's actually not a massive amount of money just on the deer that are actually passing away in our community. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Yeah, I just have a question on the third clause. Do you want that included as well or not?
I'm going to just take the first clause right now and call the question on it. So I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor, this is attaching the budget to the preliminary budget. Moved, thank you, and opposed. Appleton and Braithwaite opposed. That does carry. You could move the last piece if you want, just we can test it at the will of the, yes, 1020. We'd have to extend, but.
Thank you. I will move the third clause.
Is there a seconder for that clause? Moved and seconded. So I need a motion to extend for another 10 minutes, please. To 10:40. Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed, not opposed? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Green. Wish to speak to it?
I think, we've all had a chance to make our points. I won't waste too much time, just that I think I agree that this does provide leverage. And I noticed that the words if and if are prominent, so it's not committing us to something that we can't deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Yes, I just in following up, I don't think we really know unless we try. And like any new program, novel program, even 1 year of experience in doing this would give us an opportunity for some review. Programs, especially new programs, it's a good practice to do program evaluation and review. So I don't think we're not committing ourselves to the long haul here. We're just committing ourselves to giving this a try and seeing what happens. And I think that really is important from a community health and safety point of view.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Appleton.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I will be supporting the motion. I'll wait to hear what other people have to say, but I would like to have another touch point at council closer to July 1st to just have a check-in to hear about how the conversations went with the CRD and different municipalities. And so I see the efficiency of this motion, but I don't see a need to put this forward now. I can understand that perhaps staff might want the approval of the July 1st deadline, which I am in favor of as far as that time to communicate with partners, but I would like another council touch point to have further discussion.
Councillor Appleton, the Braithwaite.
Thank you, Your Worship. So then I would ask a point of clarification here, because if I look at the way that this is structured, it does say incorporating $85,000 to operationalize deer management. In option 1 in the staff report, it says as part of the 2026 provisional budget. So whether or not we're actually signing ourselves up for an ongoing, I read this as to mean we're establishing a budget line item for at that amount for ongoing year-over-year service delivery. So I don't take that as a one-time try it for a season type of thing and then do a feedback loop. I see this as an ongoing piece. So then operationalize under this third clause, then I take that to further mean that this third clause means that contracted delivery of deer management services will be a yearly initiative based on on ongoing budget line item established. So I could potentially support a single year 2026 evaluation of costs associated with contracted deer management, But that's not how I read the language in this. I see this as establishment of an ongoing service, so therefore it would be ongoing contracted delivery of deer management services.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I don't know. I interpret it, that's the intent, but of course annually you'd have to approve it. So I think that was how I would read it, but Ms. Bay?
I think that's correct, Your Worship, that it was intended to be an ongoing amount. They're having, with the caveat that it might be adjusted up or down depending on the experience that we get through the RFP process and depending on where things went in discussions with potential partners. Having said that, that's totally up to council. If council wishes to specify that the intent is one time only, then that's another option.
And my apologies, I probably muddied the water there. My thought of that was just when it comes to the budgetary process, we may want to, when you're establishing a new service, you really do have to set it into the long-term financial plan. My thought on that was maybe we could do that as, taking from surplus and so forth for 1 year, run through it, et cetera, and then look at that operationally as we have more data to deal with it. So that's part of probably I muddied the water there a little bit because I don't think we've entirely decided that and probably won't until we get to the budget process. Back to you, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'll be brief again, and I appreciate those comments, but even given that we haven't had the budgetary discussion, that sort of thing, I'm not comfortable with the language of this specific clause because it's not clear to me whether or not we're essentially making a decision for an ongoing service. So.
Councillor Braithwaite?
And I'll be voting against based on my previous comments.
Thank you very much. I'm going to just speak very briefly in favor of this. I think that I think it's really critical for us to do 1 year of this. Hopefully, we'll have a couple of partners attached to it, but I think without something that kind of demonstrates this is sort of what going through an RFP process, getting some costing, walking through this, I think we just won't know. So I'd actually, in the budgeting process, probably prefer to look at this as maybe a one-time piece and then look at it more operationally in the longer term. But I do think that we should go through this process in the coming year. Ultimately, of course, that would be determined by council at the budget process. But I think for now we should indicate that's the intention. And again, that will strengthen our advocacy to the region as well. Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Just hearing that line of conversation, for council's consideration, then I will put forth a potential amendment for the third option to add in the words for 1 year after the word Oak Bay.
Is there a seconder? Okay. Don't see a seconder. So the main motion is moved on the floor. Going to turn to the... Oh, go ahead, Councillor Smart. My apologies.
No, I just wanted to say then that I won't be supporting the motion because I do also feel that with this being a motion that potentially looks like it's operationalizing it for many years, I worry about how that might impact the possibility of us doing it for 1 year and then having the province actually fund it beyond that point. If we basically say we're going to operationalization in this for many years, I worry about how that impacts our leverage to move this to a provincial funding model.
Thank you. And I can maybe give a little clarification. The funding that the province has funded in the past for operational or research through PUDAC has been on a cost management, like a cost matching basis. So they have funded, they've sought how much money you're putting in and have agreed to sort of essentially match that funding on a half and half basis. Whether that continues in the future, impossible to know. So just so there's that clarification. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I do think that some of these discussions we're having about whether it be 1 year or multiple years or whatnot, it should go forward and it should be discussed in the context of the financial plan. That is my take on it. I also do not want to limit the staff being able to communicate with others in the region and with contractors as to whether there is an advantage to having a multi-year contract like we do have with other services or whether it is just an annual contract. So at this time, I think it is better, wiser of us to have it included so that it goes into the financial plan. We have options after that, something happens and we decide we don't want to fund it, then it doesn't come out of the budget. But if we don't put it in, and then we want to, then we're trying to find dollars. So I think it is better it's a wiser move to put it in and make the decisions at the financial plan time.
Thank you. Going to call the question. All those in favor and those opposed? Councillor Appleton and Braithwaite opposed. That does carry. So all three, after all that, all three of them are going forward. I look forward to writing that letter, though, because I know the feedback I got from the mayors was quite excited about the opportunity to get that news. Is there any new business?
Move adjournment.
Moves seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed? Thank you, everybody, for your patience. That was a long meeting, but we got through it all, and well done.
Recording stopped.